Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 7 o'clock, so we're going to get started. It's Monday, November 14th, and we have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting?
So moved. Second.
We will now vote to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Tonight's agenda is approved. Dr. Stanley, would you please review tonight's agenda for us?
Absolutely. Tonight we will hear Excellence in Action from our Concord Elementary Cafe Community Partnership Group. Also, this is a unique evening in that we recess the meeting. We have a public hearing around World's Best Workforce, which is related to state legislation. We'll come back into the meeting. We'll have an opportunity to hear from public comment from community members. We have an update from Dr. Randy Smazel, our Assistant Superintendent, and a few principals on our culture and climate work. We have a discussion about our data metrics plan and what we're doing around performance. We have some updates on substitute rates, our countryside programming, and on our collective bargaining agreement with our principals. And then, of course, we had a board election, and we'll canvass those votes. We have some updates from business office and policy review.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley. First on the agenda is tonight's Excellence in Action, and we're going to hear about the Concord Cafeteria Refresh, which was generously funded and led by our Concord PTO. We're always thankful for the work that our PTOs across our district do, and we'd like to welcome Shelley Wrights, the Concord PTO president, to share more.
Should we come up front?
Absolutely, yes, right up here. Come on up, everyone. And if you'd like to introduce everyone else that's here, and if you want to bring up more chairs or need to bring up more chairs, you're welcome to. There we go.
That was a very Edina moment. We just got more than we asked for.
Welcome, everyone.
So here, Daphne has some pictures for us. So we will start in 2019. Our mom, Layla's Vivian over here, came to, are we on?
Oh, sorry, click there's a bar on the bottom, just to click. There we go,
Am I
thank
on?
you.
I've done this before. Okay, so in 2019, Layla Vivian here came to a PTO meeting and said, can we pretty please do something about that cafeteria? Our cafeteria is in the basement. It is windowless. It is made entirely out of concrete and is deafeningly loud. And it was kind of a sad place for the kids to be. And in 2019, we weren't sure that we could do something of that magnitude. And in 2020, it was our playground year, and in the course of doing that, we realized, actually, we can manage a project of that size. And with the parent group that we have, I think we could probably get that done. So with the playground done, we went back and asked some of the parents, like, hey, anybody have ideas for what we can do about these things, the bad acoustics, the darkness, like the tired flooring and walls. We had storage problems. The music room is back there and was sort of sad looking. This is kind of what it looked like before. You can see a ton of clutter in the back. It's pretty dark. It was just a sad place for the kids to be. The flooring was in bad shape. The walls were in bad shape. And this is the entrance to the music room where the kids go all the time. It's just full of kids club clutter and custodial clutter and all kinds of junk that just ended up with no other place to go. And so the cool thing that we have learned about our parent community is that when we ask for something, somebody always raises their hand. And in this case, we had this amazing team of parents say, hey, I've got a skill that would be helpful here. So Layla came back and joined the team since it was her idea. Laura Engen is an interior decorator. Carrie Medor is an architect who's done work for some other school districts in the area. Lindsay Ronning here has a background in art and design and is a real estate agent, knows all the contractors all over the place. Jessica and Chris Skraybeck own Sonus Interiors, which provides a lot of the acoustical equipment and materials that we have used in this building and in some of the other buildings. And then Nicholas Well, who is a branding and art expert extraordinaire. So all these folks raised their hands. We put in a ton of new improvements, walls, flooring, ceilings, art panels that are sound dampening, dealt with some of the storage issues, and now the cafeteria looks like this. So it is a joyful, colorful, fun place for the kids to be. It is much quieter. You don't need an Excedrin and a beer after you've done lunch duty in there. So I think everyone is just much happier with that space. It's a really nice place for our whole community. And then you can see some of the flooring products that we put in. That is the music room entrance that is all cleaned up. Our music teacher is so happy that there's no longer just a jumble of mops and buckets and kids club materials outside there. We have some really cool art. There are 4 panels in there. We worked with a local artist to create things, and those have lots of interesting components in them. The kids love to look at them and find cool things. A lot of local color, too. There's the Edina Mill in there and some fun Minneapolis items. There's a little bit more on the art that's in there. There's seasonal and food-based, to go with the cafeteria theme. And then I want to send a special shout out, that clutter situation. Again, the moms raised their hands, and we have the moms who love the home edit. They came and dealt with every single bin and piece of trash that Kids Club had in there and put it in that beautiful Instagrammable color-coded bucket thing so that we could keep everything clean, so that our music teacher can be, has a space that she can be proud of too when she brings those kids through. So that is our project. We're very thankful to all of the parents, very grateful that we have so many people who are willing to share not just their finances, but their talents with the district. Thanks, guys.
That's amazing. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Do board members have any questions or comments?
And our kudos to Eric Hamilton, who was a very
Yeah.
wonderful partner, letting us do this and working us through, the process and what would work and helping us make it, pick things that would make sense.
That's awesome.
Good?
No? Well, thank you, all of you, for
Thank
coming
you.
and participating and showing this to us. Appreciate it.
Great.
So, yay.
Thank you all.
We are moving on to hearings from members of the public pursuant to Board Policy 20. Oh, I am sorry. I skipped over World's Best Workforce. So we are going to recess the meeting and do our World's Best Workforce public hearing. Basically, what that means is that the administration is presenting World's Best Workforce public hearing to the public. And so if people have any questions, they're to address them to administration because the board technically is on recess. So at this time, we'll recess the board meeting.
Okay, I'll invite Administration Dr. Randy Smalzo, Director Jody D. St. Hubert to come up, and Greg Gusweiler to come up to share information about World's Best Workforce. Just a little bit of background. World's Best Workforce comes from state statute, and it focuses on career and college readiness. And so, Dr. Smalzo, whenever you're ready, or Director D. St. Hubert, whenever you're ready, you can go.
I will get started here.
Looking to advance the slides.
Yes, looking at the remote. How'd you do it? Which one did you push? Okay, thank you. Okay, good evening. My name is Jody D. St. Hubert, Director of Teaching and Learning, and I am joined this evening by Greg Gusweiler, a Data Programming Analyst and Coordinator, and Dr. Randy Smazel, Assistant Superintendent. We are here at this public hearing to present progress on the World's Best Workforce and Achievement and Integration reports. Our Edina vision is to ensure that each and every student discovers their possibilities and thrives. Following our clearly articulated 2020-2027 strategic plan, the World's Best Workforce and Achievement and Integration reports are closely connected to each other. Each report outlines goals and action steps that keep the portrait of each and every Edina graduate at the center of decision-making. The World's Best Workforce Bill was passed in 2013 to ensure that every Minnesota school district in the state is making strides to increase student performance. It focuses on a comprehensive long-term plan. It structures intentional alignment with additional district plans that are also aimed at supporting student achievement and preparing students to be college, career, and civic ready. As mentioned, the world's best workforce is closely aligned with the Achievement and Integration Plan, as well as the district strategic plan, the district data metrics plan, our current pre-K through 12 comprehensive literacy plan, title programs, teacher evaluation programs, state American Indian aid education, and much more. We will begin the public hearing by specifically focusing in on the world's best workforce. There are many different people involved in both creating and monitoring the Edina Public Schools World Best Workforce Plan. Most importantly, I would like to draw our attention to the World's Best Workforce Advisory Committee. This year, on October 27th, a team of Edina staff members, Edina students, and Edina community members had our first World's Best Workforce meeting of the 2022-23 school year. There were 30 advisory members present, and this team worked through a process to look at our purpose, our norms, and we were also able to begin providing feedback to develop future goals based on data from our Edina metrics report. The advisory committee and community role is a critical component of a world's best workforce. So tonight, we are going to go through several different components of the world's best workforce. Our 2021-2022 goals follow the 5 key areas as outlined in legislation. They are: all students are ready for school, all third graders can read at grade level, all racial and economic achievement gaps are closed, all students are ready for career and college, and all students graduate from high school. The remaining World Best Workforce slides are broken down into these 5 categories. They will follow a pattern of reporting on the 2021-2022 goals. Then there will be an analysis of the goals. Then there is direct connection to the Edina strategic plan and draft goals for the 2022-23 school year with short analysis. I will highlight a couple of key points from each of the slides going forward. So the first goal area is from 2021-22, all students ready for school, focused on 3 distinct goals, and you'll see that we met 2 of those 3 goals. Our analysis focuses on the comprehensive whole child as an early learner starting in our system. We have been very successful with our screening process over the years and are continuing to focus and develop that to expand it to 3-year-olds. I also want to highlight our early learning educators and their professional development that they engage in around the pyramid model. The pyramid model promotes healthy social and emotional development. And this is a base for all learning for our Edina students all the way through their career here. Our administration has been very supportive of this professional development and have also expanded to engage in a new literacy curriculum last year. And that is connected to our TS Gold assessment, where we're able to see where our students are in the early learning process, more targeted at their academics. You will see that this aligns with has direct alignment with 6 of our strategic priority areas. Because of the robust professional development that our early educators are engaging in, we have collectively determined the need for additional robust World Best Workforce goals for 22-23. The goals specifically added is in alignment with academic preparedness and aligns with FastBridge data that our students that are in the Early Learning Center will be showing us in the fall of their kindergarten year. It's exciting to report that our early learning program has engaged heavily in our comprehensive literacy plan. An area that I'd like to highlight from this slide is the creative curriculum implementation, the professional development, and the implementation process that's being followed with that, as well as the number of staff that are in the letters cohort for early childhood learning and getting deep pedagogical professional development around the science of reading. Our 2021-22 goal areas of all 3rd graders reading at grade level is a little bit different. Our MCA goal we have not met, And our other goal is focused on map data. Our map data in 2020-21 was a winter map data point, and then in 21-22 was a fall data point. So because those were two different data points in the year, that's why we indicated that we're unable to report on that goal. And we have some great additions to our assessment plan this year that will help us do a more concrete job of evaluating that into the future. So our analysis of the action steps that were in place last year for all third graders can read at grade level are very specific to our pre-K through 12 comprehensive literacy plan and the K through 5 CLP implementation. We had, I'd like to highlight the literacy leadership teams that we had at every elementary building that worked very hard and intensively on 20 hours of research on the science of reading and current best practices around implementation of that in Tier 1 instruction. We also did some focus on the EPS Dyslexia Guidebook and providing some professional development for our staff on that area. You can see on this slide that aligns with 4 specific areas that are directly aligned with our strategic plan. Our proposed goals for the 2022-23 school year continue to be around the area of MCA reading, and we also added goals very specific to our FastBridge universal screening, which we've talked about and highlighted in our data metrics report. The goals are very specific to the area of aggressive growth. So for students in every grade level, we've articulated a goal that ensures that our students who are below grade level are growing at an aggressive rate so that they're able to reach grade level as quick as possible. We continue to work very intently on implementing the pre-K through 12 comprehensive literacy plan, and some areas that I'd like to highlight here is that we have 145 teachers in K through 2, including ATSIS, Title I, ML, special ed teachers in letters training currently, and 9 administrators. That training is well underway, and we're working hard to see how that, to implement that into Tier 1 instruction and make sure it has a direct impact on students. We are also working with new curriculum for our multilingual learners at the beginning levels. That has begun, and we're continuing to move that into action. And we've had this at the board at many occasions, but we're excited about our universal screening that's happening with FastBridge and the response to that data, even more specifically, where we're able to see where our students are at and then create instructional matches to help them all grow. The third World's Best Workforce Goal area is racial and economic achievement gaps are closed. The data shows that we were very close to meeting this goal last year. Our goal was to reduce the difference in performance on MCA reading between free and reduced lunch and non-free and reduced lunch students by 5 points, and that we did that reduction. We had 4.5% decrease in the gap, but we were not quite there to reach our goal, so that indicates that no, we did not reach that goal. And we'll continue to focus on not only economic achievement gaps in our upcoming year and our goals, but also some racial achievement gaps that we're seeing in our data. Definitely our analysis of this data from last year was that we're definitely still seeing an impact from COVID on all of our students, and that the need to continue to focus on the growth for all students is critical throughout this time as students are getting readjusted to being in the classrooms and different experiences since COVID. We are also wanting to highlight how committed we are to an equitable and inclusive school culture and how deeply embedded that is into strategy B of the 2020-27 strategic plan. Here highlighting this goal, it's directly aligned with 6 of our strategic plan areas. Our 22-23 draft proposed goals, again, I mentioned this, but they expand to also highlighting some areas of racial gaps that we have in our academics. Racial specific to our multilingual students and the gaps in some of the data that we're seeing, and our Black students and non-Black student discrepancies in some areas of our MCA data, as well as continuing with the free and reduced lunch goal. So So our proposed strategies, targeted action steps are currently happening with learning around the tools of cultural proficiency school systems. We currently have 87 staff members who have completed 3 or more days of training with Dr. Trudy Arriaga, and we are continuing to develop a plan and how to expand that to all staff members in Edina Public Schools over the next 3 years. It's also critical to highlight again our FastBridge universal screening and how all students are being identified and instructional matches are being put in place. And that targeted work is very critical to helping us close these gaps. The fourth goal area, 2021-22, all students are ready for career and college. Focuses, as the goal was established, it was targeted for ACT data to be highlighted there in the goal as our indicator if the goal has been met or not. We did meet the goal in one of those 2 areas. I do want to point out that the STEM portion is a subset of the ACT, and that's an area that's exciting that our students are doing really well in, and we look forward to extending that STEM to STEAM in a lot of the programming and work that's currently happening. So that highlights a lot of the analysis of the data from last year, that despite the challenges that our Edina students are facing during the pandemic, our ACT scores have remained strong. We do want to point out that there are fewer students taking ACT tests, and there is a lot of analysis around ACT tests that needs to continue to be dug into. Our STEM courses that we currently offer are fantastic in providing an excellent experience for our students, and we are committed to that addition of STEAM, and that's moving along in several different areas right now. This World's Best Workforce goal and the work that is currently happening aligns with 4 of our strategic plan areas very directly. And then we have proposed goals for 22-23. We want to expand the focus on ACT solely, as our goal has been in the past, and make sure that we're using the great work in our data metrics plan. So we're including in our draft of our goals that we look at our gateway courses and how we are using that data, and also we're excited to dig into the work of adding more internship and work experiences for our Edina students while they are here in school, and we definitely have a lot of action plans in place to increase that. Over the years, I see that growing immensely. Some exciting things to report on some proposed strategies for this school year are that we do have our new position where we have Dr. Anne-Marie Leland as Community Education and Strategic Partnerships Director, and the collaboration that she's brought to our work is already strengthening all of the things that are happening for our students. We're also really excited to share and talk about our Career and Tech Ed department that is now at Edina High School. They had their first advisory meeting a couple of weeks ago. It was a successful meeting, and lots of partnerships are being formed, and lots of good work in that career and technical education area is happening. Also, our elementary STEAM design team has been meeting and working very closely with Dr. Anne-Marie Thomas from St. Thomas. And tomorrow, our secondary STEAM design team is meeting with Dr. Jessica Brown from Stanford Design School. I also would be remiss if I didn't highlight how important our AVID College Ready system is for this goal, and the strategies that happen around AVID will continue to be a focus. So our final World's Best Workforce goal to report on, the 21-22 goal, all students graduate from high school. We have met the goal in several areas and not in others. And we just want to highlight that the graduation data is tracked very carefully by our Edina High School staff and our district staff, that at the end of the year, when we know our students that have graduated on time or who have not, we definitely make sure that we have a plan in place for tracking them and ensure that they graduate by September 15th of the next year. All students graduate from high school. Our 7-year graduation rate is 97.7%. If we look at last year's data, all but 2 students who did not graduate with their peers in June of 2022 are currently enrolled in either programming at Northern Star Online or Edina High School to get on target for that graduation. I know our staff are highly committed to supporting all of these students, and our high school counseling has a curriculum map that's very specific of touch points that they have with the students from 9th grade all the way through 12 in order to help them along the way with that goal. For the strategic plan alignment for the school, I simply put in the vision and mission because when we read our mission, the world's best workforce, this specific world's best workforce goal is accumulation of all that is in Edina's strategic plan. It's supporting all students graduate through academics, activities, and opportunities. Our proposed 2022-23 draft goals are that we increase the graduation rate of our multilingual learners and other special education populations. And with the thank you, Randy. Dr. Smazel, appreciate it. So with the strategies for 22-23, one thing that I want to highlight that is an addition this year is that our high school advisory curriculum programming has been in place for a long time, and it was rewritten this summer to have a focus on many of these strategies that will help all students graduate and very specifically help with high levels of engagement in that advisory period of time. So there's students engaged in a deep level with a curriculum that the counselors have worked on and other staff members to ensure that it's culturally proficient for all students. And I want to highlight that we have our first Edina High School has an AVID class that's offered with full enrollment in 9th through 12th. And we have our first ever Questbridge Scholar in the high school AVID class of 23. Questbridge Scholars rank their college interest in order. If any of the other schools match with them, the scholar is not only admitted to the school, but they also go for free for all 4 years. So it's exciting that we already have a student that we know has that opportunity due to our AVID programming. So additional steps for moving forward with the world's best workforce, we'll continue to get feedback from our advisory board and determine what those goals, move those goals from draft form to final form for 2022-23. We will definitely be working closely with our Edina assessment plan and data metrics plan to continue to make sure that we are making strides towards our action steps and on target for that. And we will continue to engage in that development both with our outside advisory committee as well as our internal team. Huge areas are to accelerate the growth for students in both literacy and math through strong Tier 1 and core instruction. Also raise proficiency scores at an increased rate for students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and engaged in continued alignment with the Achievement and Integration Plan, as well as all other plans that were mentioned earlier on in the report. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Smazel to highlight components of the 2020-23 Achievement and Integration Plan.
Thank you, Jody. Director D. St. Hubert gave me one job to run the clicker, and I was struggling to do that. So hopefully I will try to do a better job here. Thank you for giving us some time this evening. I will talk a little bit about achievement and integration and how that is an extension, really, of the world's best workforce legislation. You'll see a few of these concepts that overlap with what Director D. St. Hubert just presented. But the Achievement and Integration Plan is basically Minnesota's plan to increase racial and economic integration, to reduce achievement disparities, and specifically to increase effective and diverse teachers. We receive about 1.1 to 1.3 or 1.35 million the past few years for achievement integration funding. That's used for a range of activities across the district, ranging from cultural liaisons to the use of cultural liaisons in our schools, to the use of intervention teachers in our schools, to an opportunity to partner with another school district like Hopkins on some summer programming that prepares early childhood students for kindergarten. It's called Ready, Set, Kindergarten, and is also a bridge in preparing middle school students for high school. So it's called AVID Summer Bridge. So those are a couple of some of the elements that are funded through achievement and integration. One of the things that school districts have to do is complete a 3-year plan. We completed our last 3-year plan prior to COVID in the 2018-19 school year, and that plan will carry us through the end of this fiscal year, and during this fiscal year, we'll actually be working on a new plan, and that plan will last for the next 3 years. So that'll carry us all the way through 2026, which seems far away a few years ago, but is getting so close as time goes by here. Our task force is going to start here in November, and we will be bringing an update back to the board in February with a budget and a plan that will be then submitted to Minnesota Department of Education in the spring, and then that budget will again address the dollars that are allocated to the school district for achievement integration funding. So we have a few goals that were set forth in the plan going back to 2018 and 19. These goals will tweak some as we move into the next plan, but this is what they were previously. So goal number 1 was the percent of students who identify as Black, Hispanic, American Indian, Pacific Islander who are enrolled in 3rd grade and EPS who are proficient on MCA reading will increase from 54% to 70%. 54% in the spring and 2019 to 70% in 2023. Minnesota has set an aggressive goal, which is great, to have this proficiency be at 85% for the groups just previously mentioned. We did not hit that target. Our target for the spring was 66% because we take these targets in steps, and our proficiency was 57%. Some of the actions that we're using along the way include the tool FastBridge for screening students. In our beginning days of the elementary school year, we did our Connect and Assess days, and it was an opportunity to start that screening process in FastBridge. Once students are screened, then we look at the interventions that are specific to the student needs, and then we are leveraging those interventions. We've also provided additional letters training, as Director D. St. Hubert has mentioned, and tools of cultural proficiency training. And as we'll be describing in a few minutes with our culture and climate report, we revamped our continuous school improvement planning process as well. The second goal is about the gap in reading proficiency rates, and this is really about showing accelerated growth and decreasing that gap over time. If we go back to 2019, the gap between the student groups described was 32 points, and the goal was to be at 15 points by 2023. So that's a halving of that gap. So that's a significant decrease. We did not hit that goal for this last year. We were relatively close. The goal was 19.25 percentage points. And again, that's a reduction of gap over time. And we were at 21.55. The statewide gap for this last spring was 27.3%. Our third goal in Achievement Integration Plan would be to retain students that are enrolled in Edina Public Schools that participate in what used to be called the Minneapolis Transportation Program. I believe now it's called the Equity Options Program. And in this program, students who come to Edina Public Schools through open enrollment and live in certain areas of Minneapolis are provided transportation free as long as they meet a free and reduced price meal threshold or an educational benefits threshold. And what our goal is then to retain our students that meet that threshold and come to Edina as our Edina students. And some of the actions that we employ around that are providing supports through AVID, supports through College Possible, and it's really about trying to retain students through quality experiences and exposure to college opportunities, to higher educational opportunities. And super proud to say that last spring, of the students that were participating in our AVID elective, 100% of those students earned scholarships for full tuition at post-secondary schools. The second chart here just summarizes how we've been tracking on some of that data over the last couple of years. And then, of course, for 22-23, that data will be populated this spring and then will be reported back to the board next fall. With that, I will turn it over to Director D. St. Hubert for the last slide.
So as part of our world's best workforce legislation, it is our collective responsibility to ensure equitable access to excellent and diverse educators. These slides highlight both our staff diversity and our student diversity. The slide also highlights details of one of our greatest strengths in Edina, and that is our teachers. With that, we will turn it over to questions from the community.
So I have a question in the back.
Yeah. Everything that you did and said, it's all about growth in the district. It's starting at a base point and we're going up. I'm wondering how the kids that meet proficient standards, so they're hitting 40th percentile, they count as proficient, but they have negative growth over time. How are you identifying them? How are you helping them? How do they fit into this program?
Thank you for the question. There's a couple of different components to that. It all comes under the umbrella of what we call multi-tiered systems of support. And so there's several layers and details to that system. But one of the components is that there are teams, different teams looking at student data and having conversations. And when we say looking at student data, that's a comprehensive look at student data. That could be FastBridge data, it could be classwork that the students are seeing, it could be teacher observation, it could be student input. And so in those collective conversations, we're able to determine where all students are in their progression and if they're growing. There are specific reports in FastBridge that show us all students' growth. And so that's highlighted in FastBridge reports, but it's important we don't only look at those, that we look at a comprehensive picture of all the students. And then in those conversations, if that's a conversation with the administration team and teachers and all the supports that encompass the student's day, then there's a plan created so that we ensure that all students are growing based on that plan and the observations of those data. And then there's also excellent, another component of multi-tiered systems of support is called our professional learning communities. And that's really regular, often weekly, most likely 2 to 4 times a month, where teams of teachers, like third grade teachers, are sitting and meeting together about how students are doing in their classroom. And the team of third grade teachers, for example, are collectively responding to what they're seeing on a weekly basis in the classroom. And the conversation does have to be comprehensive about all students and ensuring that all students are making growth. So that system and those opportunities for conversations of collaboration around data help us ensure what you were asking for in terms of the growth for all.
I do have a follow-up. Does Edina Schools use the term dyslexia? And are they addressing it with any students with dyslexia?
So we talk about markers of dyslexia. We can't diagnose dyslexia, but we certainly can look at markers of dyslexia, and we are definitely talking about that. We had a professional development session last year around the markers of dyslexia with plans and processes for our teachers to be able to use if they would see students in their classrooms that have markers of dyslexia. Again, we can't diagnose it, and we refer to it as markers of dyslexia because as our professional development grows and increases around letters and other things as well, then we're more equipped to recognize those markers of dyslexia across our system. Right now, we have our our K through 2, early learning through 2 teachers involved in that intensive PD. Last year, K through 5 teachers had an overview of the markers of dyslexia and the systems that are in place, and we plan to expand the intense letters training for all teachers in some capacity.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for the comprehensive report. We appreciate that, and we'll turn it back over to Chair Allenberg.
Thank you. We'll now return from recess and move on with our board meeting to our hearing from members of the public. Pursuant to Board Policy 206, we ask that you do not duplicate information that has been previously presented. If you have a complaint or information about individual employees, board members, or students in the district, please direct any of these comments to the appropriate site administrator, the superintendent, or submit them in writing to the board. The board typically does not respond to or have discussion on any issues presented, but questions raised during presentations will receive follow-up as directed by the board. I'd like to remind all speakers that your presentations are limited to 3 minutes. We have a display that will show you when your 3 minutes are up, so please finish when that time is up. We do have a number of speakers tonight, so if you could mind the 3 minutes, that would be wonderful. First is Mindy Ayler. Oh, the students are going to go first, okay. Then we have Alexandra Ayers, and is it Isla Stevens? Welcome. And there's a little mark there on the phone, there we go, you're a pro, to turn on the.
Hi, I'm Isla Stevens.
And I'm Alexandra Ayers.
We're both in seventh grade at Southview Middle School. The Southview Environmental Group, or SVEG, is split up into 3 different groups of your choice that focus on different aspects of the environment. The group us two are working in is a gardening group. The reason I joined SVEG is that I've learned that the environment and some of the animals of our earth could be gone within a century. I've always loved animals, and this made me want to work to save them. Right now, our group is working with the rest of the school to redo our garden in our courtyard, and we're weeding and planting pollinator plants so that the classes can enjoy the courtyard in nice weather.
The reason I joined SVEG is because I wanted to make a difference in our community and on our planet. For our group, in the future, we are planning on having more classmates and teachers able to appreciate a very cleaned up and eye-pleasing courtyard. It may take a long time to get there, but if we work together to raise awareness, we may get to the point quicker. We hope that one day in the future, all schools in Edina Public Schools have an environmental group just like Southview. It takes a lot to run a school that is included in keeping everything powered, transporting everyone, and other things like that. In the future, we would like this school to be run on renewable energy to help the planet. Thank you for your time.
Is this Alexander? Yes. Okay. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
My name is Xander Taisho, and
My name is Marco Tomjanovic.
Welcome.
my name is Xander, and I'm in 7th grade at Southview Middle School.
My name is Marco, and I'm in 6th grade at Southview Middle School. I joined Southview Middle School called SVEG because I had learned in my social studies class in 5th grade about that the Mississippi River 100 years ago used to have been fully frozen over. I wanted to make a change, and that's why I'm here presenting to you. Thank you for listening to us, and I hope you enjoy our thing.
Our solution to 2 of the sections in environmental problems, food and planting trees, is a hydroponic gardening system. Normally, you could just buy a hydroponic gardening system online for upwards of $250, but as a school, we probably can't get that money just for an SLT. So instead, we decided to come up with an IKEA-based hydroponic gardening system, and that definitely drops the price from something that can grow 2 heads of lettuce for $250 instead of something that could grow maybe 10 heads of lettuce per stack, and then 4 stacks for $150.
So the seeds we're planting are not any normal seeds because we don't have like a huge amount of space. They're called high germination seeds. Germination means like sprouting. High germination seeds have a bigger chance of sprouting, and that will have a bigger chance of producing lettuce.
We wish to offer our lettuce and tomatoes to the school lunchroom, as many have requested. And we also offer you to come and see it when it's done in a full Minnesota winter. And you can still see lettuce and tomatoes growing in an indoor classroom.
We'd like to thank the school board for listening to us in our time.
Goodbye.
We have John Doyle and Claire Damon.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Claire Damon. I'm an 8th grader at Southview Middle School, and I'm in the Southview Environmental Group, or SPAG. It's a student leadership team that revolves around the environment. This is my 3rd year on the team. In my free time, I like to ski, travel, and read. I joined SPAG because I wanted to affect real change and be a better steward of this planet that we share. And at SPAG, I'm working on increasing awareness of environmental issues in the community. We need to do something to protect our planet and our environment. And because of that, we feel like we need to do more. As a school board, you have an obligation to lead us in being good stewards of the environment, and as a school system, we have done plenty to help the environment. And we thank you for that. But we also have a school system that is huge polluters, and we have some of the greatest funds to do something about the problem. And we are here to ask how we can help improve our impact on the environment of this planet that we share and increase awareness of the issues that affect it.
Hello, my name is Jack, and I'm an 8th grader at Southview Middle School. Near my house, there is a beautiful lake with a lot of trees around it, and I have always liked walking through those woods and admiring the scenery since I was very young. Those woods made me realize that our planet is a fantastic place I wanted to help. I joined the Southview Environmental Group to help protect the green places like the woods by my house. Right now, our part of the environmental group is called the Environmental Enthusiasts. And we are campaigning around our school and Edina to raise awareness about the ways that you can help preserve our environment. We have made posters and are about to record a slideshow to send to many elementary schools so they know how to take action too. Again, we thank you greatly for your ongoing support of our environment. Because there are so many students, staff, and classrooms, the school system uses a lot of energy, which leads to pollution. This means that there are many great opportunities for the school system to reduce its climate impact, from small things like replacing old light bulbs with LEDs, to more complex endeavors like investing more in renewable energy sources. We hope that we can move forward together for a better future. Thank you.
Every little bit of environmental protection and awareness of how our actions affect the environment is a big step towards creating a world where it's a better place. And we believe that with your help, we can achieve our goals. Thank you for your time.
Matt Pearson.
Well, hello. My name is Matt Pearson. I teach orchestra, music, and theater at Southview, but I also am one of the co-directors of the Southview Environmental Group, the young folks that you just heard from. There's not a lot that I can say that will be more impactful than the message you just heard from all of them. What I would like to say is that our program is truly a co-design. The students come up with the projects, they set the projects every year, and they set them for the things that they are passionate about. The other part that we work towards together is creating partnerships. We have partnered with elected officials such as Dean Phillips and Heather Edelson. We have a meeting with Governor Walz coming up this year. We have partnered with Mayor Hovland. We have a great ongoing partnership with Eric Hamilton and Corey Smith. We have a great partnership, of course, with our Southview admin. I have to say that because my principal is sitting behind me. And now I want to thank I'm watching. And now I want to thank you for allowing our students to now add to our partnership list the Edina School Board. So thank you very much.
Mindy Ayler.
Thank you. I'm Mindy Aller. I work with Cool Planet and also with the students at SFAG and the students at the high school in Project Earth. And I just wanted to bring to your attention something that I've observed as I've been working with the students. And I know that the school district has been doing a lot in terms of energy efficiency and all the work as we've been rebuilding the schools. But what the students are noticing is what's really visible to them. And what they're noticing is the breakdown of composting and recycling in the cafeterias, especially at the middle schools and the high school. They're noticing the styrofoam trays in the high school cafeteria. They're noticing lights that get left on when they drive by their school at night. And so it's just that disconnect of the students feel like not enough is happening because what's very visible and real and tangible to them is not what is happening. And so I just wanted to bring that observation to you to consider as you're looking at what is the culture within the schools, that those things that students touch and feel every day are what really strikes them, especially when they're very concerned about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, students, and thank you, Dorothy. Thank you. We have Dorothy Kersner.
Oh, sorry. EPAS has had 2 more resignations of professional support staff who support our wonderful students and teachers. And we hope that you are working with the district negotiating committee because we really would like to get this settled. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our hearings for members of the public. We're going to move on to a culture and climate board update. And we have, I believe we have Dr. Randy Smazel, Principal Lisa Masika, Principal Dr. Tim Anderson, Principal Andy Beaton.
Good evening, Chair Allenberg, Superintendent Stanley, our board members and community. I will start us off, and then I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Anne Marie Leland, and then to our school principals, and then some of the staff that are here this evening.
And can I interrupt you, Randy?
Sure.
We won't be offended if those of you that spoke want to leave, as scintillating as our board meetings are. So feel free to leave anytime.
That was a good call.
I just wanted them to feel welcome to.
You went to our audience. I would also like to acknowledge that we have some of our educators in the space this evening that are co-presenting as well, Michael Smith and Heather Edom from Cornelia, Whitney Brockla, and is Bob? There's Bob. There's Bob. And then David Boone from the high school as well. So thank you for being here as well this evening. We are not presenting any recommendations to the board this evening. This is for information purposes. But what we do want to do is take you back to, you get to run this. Take you back to the spring of 2022. We have presented these results to the board, but I'm just going to do a quick refresh on these. Last month, Toya Pryor and myself were back at the board meeting talking about our continuous school improvement planning process, or CSIP. And what we're going to do this evening is to take a deeper dive in an aspect or an element of that CSIP plan, and that was around how we continue to grow and advance culture and climate for our staff here in Edina Public Schools. So now I will take you back to last spring when we gave our panorama data. We, as the board recalls, we gave a survey to our staff and our students in the spring. The survey went out to staff right before spring break. That's not always the best time to survey staff, but it is also important to get that survey information from staff. We did see that through that baseline rating, 40% of staff gave what we would call favorable responses. Favorable responses means that you select the top two choices when given a Likert scale. So for example, if there was a question and it said strongly agree and agree, 40% of our staff were saying strongly agree and agree overall to all of the questions holistically. Our goal is to raise that by 20%, which is an aggressive goal according to Panorama, but to have 60% favorable responses as we head into the spring. So some of the actions that we're going to share this evening outline our process and thinking for how we're going to go about getting that change, how we're tracking on some of that data as we are trying to understand what is our trajectory for hitting that target throughout the year, and we'll describe some of those actions at the district level and some of those actions at the building level. Some of the responses that were shared in that survey are listed there in terms of low ratings and moderate ratings. And then we had many open-ended responses that were shared, and it was from these responses that we clicked down some of our strategies and actions for this plan, both at the building level and at the district level. In terms of district-wide culture and climate plans, again, it really went back to redesigning the school improvement plan, having more persistent attention and focus, doing some additional training with our leaders over the summer about navigating change and creating dignified learning environments. We did go on a deep dive with Panorama around some of the tools and some of the data that we have available for the principals. Mainly our focus there was on student data and how we could leverage some of the social emotional learning data inside of Panorama, but it also tracks data on our adults. And then it's important to know that one of the recommendations that we saw from staff as a theme was to really dig into the substitute system and to identify some of the barriers and blockers and challenges with the substitute system. So as you know, we have teachers on call as part of our substitute system. We have premier subs at our buildings. We also have some virtual sub options at the high school still. And I think there is further discussion and agenda around substitutes and how we navigate that moving forward. That's on your agenda this evening. As Director D. St. Hubert mentioned earlier, in terms of some of the professional learning we have listed there, one of the things I'll highlight is that we now have 19 trainers available in our district to help us advance tools for cultural proficiency. And we heard from staff that that was also something that they desired for us to continue to grow and advance across the district. We shared last month our framework for continuous school improvement, and I'm simply highlighting that one of our goals as a district here is to advance school climate and culture, and that happens both at the district level and it happens at the school level. So we all have a part in trying to grow and advance that. So recognizing that, this template was shared with all of our administrators, and they're leveraging that at their school sites to advance their plans. One of the models that we did some training around this summer is from a individual who is a leader of teams, an expert in teams, and his name is Patrick Lencioni. And his model really helps us understand that if you want to have high performance and you want people to be motivated to continue to derive that high performance, you also have to have an environment that is high in humanity. When you have one or the other, you're not getting the most out of people in the system, either for staff or for kids. And so what Lencioni talks about is this idea of creating dignified learning environments, environments where people feel a sense of dignity. Dignity is something you can't deliver to somebody, but it's something that becomes realized as a result of the environment that they're working in and that they're learning in if they're a student. So what we did is we unpacked that model and really looked at what are the factors that contribute to growing humanity and what are those factors that contribute to enhancing performance. And as you can imagine, in Edina Public Schools, we do want to increase performance, so we also have to increase the other side of this bar chart, or this graph. So in terms of performance, if we're going to increase performance, that means that we're instituting some type of change. And if you're instituting some type of change, then why not dig deep into how do we navigate change management? So another area of professional development that we employed with our administrators. So we really leveraged the Bridges model of transitions, which really identifies how people navigate and travel through transition when you're creating change. So there's really 3 steps. There's the endings, which really is about what people are feeling when they have to let go of a past practice or a past policy or a past tradition, and all of the losses that people can experience as they go through that psychological reorientation. The neutral zone represents kind of that space between the old and the new, and a place where sometimes people are also stuck, but a place where people need care and concern and support as they're trying to reorient around that proposed change. And then the new beginnings is when staff begin to embrace that change. Well, through this model and through some of the professional development work that we did, it helps give strategies about how you work with people to move through changes, which is critical to the previous chart of enhancing performance. With that, I'd like to turn over to Dr. Anne Marie Leland to talk about some district-wide culture and climate plans that we're working on.
Thank you, Dr. Smazel. This is a perfect segue as we sent a wellness survey to the entire district in the last couple of weeks, and it closed last Wednesday. And we had a number of responses. 372 people responded to the survey, and the survey was really around exactly what Dr. Smazel just presented on in terms of achieving district strategy of lifting up team member and mental health by providing a nourishing, safe, and supportive school community. In terms of getting their feedback, we had some short-term or quick implementation strategies, some medium-term, or it would take a little bit of time to think about how to implement those strategies, and then, of course, some long-term and more systemic ways of looking at wellness strategies across the district. In terms of the way we approached the wellness team was we brought in a speaker named Vicki Coitz. She's with the Center for Skilled Workforce. She co-authored a 4-part trauma-informed and resiliency building organizational framework series that is going to help us really frame up our strategies, and that's where we have the short-term, medium-term, long-term strategies. Those short-term, just as an example of what we wanted to offer people, are some just quick, I'm going to go to the survey, are some healthy snacks, some ideas around options of like Hornet Pride kinds of items, and those were really popular. So 64% of survey respondents were interested in the idea of having some sort of healthy, nourishing snack or soup, perhaps, at their break rooms. Some site-based offered opportunities around socializing was another popular one, and then the free Hornet Pride, of course, was a big one. And then people were able to also open-endedly give some feedback as well. I should mention, before I go to the medium term, the Wellness Committee. We also had a question in that survey that asked people who were interested to join a wellness committee. 30 people said they were interested. We are going to meet tomorrow at 4:15. So we're really happy to have everyone with that. The medium-term wellness ideas are around just that free biometric screening, things that can really improve physical health, easier access, low-cost opportunities to seek out mental health provider therapy, site-based information in terms of, more welcoming, warm space, calming spaces, those kinds of things. One of the medium-term wellness strategies that's already been implemented by Sonia Saylor, is our Human Resources Director, is the Employee Assistance Program, the EAP program offered by Sand Creek, one of our really wonderful EAP programs in the state of Minnesota, and she launched that on November 1st. So we appreciate that, Sonia, for all of our employees. One of the other portions of the survey was creating more long-term wellness ideas, and that is creating that in-depth framework to standardize our system to becoming trauma-informed and resiliency building. So it would create systemic practices and wellness champions throughout the district. That was received well by the survey respondents, and also some, as I said before, the site-based wellness spaces that are calming, and evidence-based professional development opportunities on building resiliency was also popular. So some of the, just to wrap up, there was some open-ended feedback as well that we received. There was about 84 responses. I just coded some of the responses back. 26 of those responses were really positive and had some proactive suggestions around some things that we could do. And the remaining were really about time, workload, financial stress, some of the stressors that we know are deeply embedded in our education system here in Edina and also nationwide. So we are wanting to, as a wellness team and as a district, really dig into that and help figure out some strategies to address those issues. Thank you.
With that, we'll invite Lisa Masika and team up to talk about some of the plans that are happening at Cornelia.
I'm in charge of this.
Michael's excited he gets a microphone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa Masika. I'm the principal at Cornelia, and I brought two of our teachers here with us today. Michael Smith is a second grade teacher and also our EME rep at Cornelia, and then Heather Edom is our fifth grade teacher and also one of our climate leads, helping to lead our staff in climate. So we're excited to present to you our plans around climate, and I'm going to start with Michael, and Michael's going to just share a little bit about what was our process moving from that March 2021.
Doesn't do anything.
You're good. You're good. So that's the first one.
Can I just, oh, there it is.
Yeah, it's the first one. So Michael's going to talk to you a little bit about our process. I think he might be a little nervous. But you're going to
I got a haircut over the weekend just for this occasion, so
he's going to do great because he's going to walk you through the process that we did in the spring and then kind of what our plans were moving forward. So
absolutely. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. My name is Michael Smith, a second grade teacher at Cornelia. Working with Lisa and initiated by Dr. Schmazel about the Panoramic Survey. We developed questions based on surveys and informal meetings with staff at Cornelia. And with some parameters that Randy set out for us, we put together a survey for our staff, not only just in our building, but around the district. And based on those questions, we identified some themes for our staff that they wanted to focus on. The themes that were identified were having time to collaborate with student support teams. It seems like we're so busy that we don't have time to meet with those teachers that are working so closely with our kids, but we only see them in the hallway in passing. So having time to get together with them and really talk informally and formally about how they're doing and what we can be doing in common to support those students. Also, common goals and norms and expectations across our building, so all teachers and staff are kind of working on the same same playing field. So everybody kind of knows the rules and is confident in what they're doing, and they're not making mistakes and stepping on people's feet. And also the big thing about building community and relationships. Oftentimes we kind of get siloed into our classrooms and we're not in touch with colleagues, and we feel that we're losing touch with who we work with. And so Lisa has built in, along with help from the staff, 4 different meetings throughout the year to get together and talk about climate issues, talk about just how things are going, talk about students individually, and how things are going in the building. And it's just nice to have that time because things are so busy. And so those are going well, and I believe the staff is really motivated to work around these goals and excited to do that. So, thank you. Oh, I think that's my job. Okay. Got it. Okay.
I got it. Thanks, Mary. So as Michael said, really just focusing on, we really believe that the foundation, and it's one of the sources of pride at Cornelia, is that climate really, the foundation of it is relationships, and to build those relationships among the staff. And I'll just kind of briefly kind of go into some of the things that we are doing more in detail. So we already, I felt like, in the spring had some really positive climate at Cornelia, and we always are looking for ways to improve that. One of the things that we felt was really important is how do we get a feel for how things are going, because that was spring, we have new staff, we want to make sure that we're checking in with people, and so we've kind of developed a little, what we kind of term as our common formative assessment. We work with our staff to kind of do a check-in. How are things going? Here are the goals that we had. How do you feel like those things have been implemented? What other ideas do you have, and what is going to tell us we're on track? So Michael and another EME member, Abe Wolfsey, also we meet on a monthly basis just to go and talk freely about things that they think are issues or things that we think we could improve on. And so those are a really open dialogue, and to help to build those relationships between staff and myself, and just what we could do to be able to support those. We also send out a quarterly staff survey before we do those climate meetings, so that we are kind of in the know about what might be coming up or what's bubbling up, and so we can address those pieces. The other thing that we felt like during COVID, what happened was we had a lot of transactional relationships, right? They weren't based on building relationships necessarily in person. A lot of people felt like they were working nonstop, and they just didn't have time to build those relationships. And some of the things that came out of the survey were a lot of things around having fun and then understanding who the people were in our building. We had hired multiple people over those 2 years, but we just didn't really have time in person together to meet those people and understand who they were as people. And get them to know more on a personal level. And then just coming back into a building where, during our hybrid years, we had kind of moved furniture around, we'd use spaces in different ways. There were a lot of new things that we did, and putting everything kind of back together, we felt it was really important to go back to building our own school norms, talking about expectations, how do we live and work together, and what's important to us. And so we really worked with a couple different teams at our site, our social emotional learning team, to talk about how are we going to move throughout the building, what are those student expectations, what does the hallway look like, what does the recess transition look like, to our climate committee talking about kind of what does it look like when you prepare for a sub, how are you not overtaxing your colleagues when you might be out, what do those emergency sub plans look like, how are you communicating with people when you're maybe out of the building. So again, increasing the communication, making sure that we're building those relationships, talking to each other. And then Michael also touched on just the ability for us. We have students who came back from COVID. We had people who really felt like they needed some dedicated time to talk and team together around the students they share, to be able to talk with each other, to say, hey, what are you doing with a student? What are you seeing? What's working? And to have dedicated time to that. And then the last thing that we really thought was really important is we just really wanted to have fun together. We wanted to build relationships. We wanted to be together. And if anyone knows Heather Edom, she is the captain of fun. So I'm going to let Heather talk a little bit about some of the fun things that she's already organized for our building, but then also maybe some plans moving forward.
I got plans. Hi, Heather Edom. First of all, I just want to say, though, huge shout out to our administrator because it would not go as well if we didn't have her. She's always very supportive. I've come to her with lots of ideas. Some of them have been like work on her end. So like even handing out, I gave door hangers to all the staff members, every staff member. So if you have a para in your room or anyone else in your room, we'll give you 2 the door hangers, and on there are choices. What do you want to drink? What do you want for a snack? And then she walked around with a cart. We've done this a few times now, and looks at your door hanger, gives you a treat. You know, that's more work on her end when she doesn't have a lot of time. But she's always been very supportive of anything we've wanted to do. And she's always been an open door. So I really just would like to put out there that it's hugely because of her. And then because I'm fun. But, so we've done things like, we've done staff trivia where everyone sends me things about themselves that they don't think anyone else knows. I make it into a big trivia thing. We've had trivia nights. We do staff happy hours every once in a while. We've had pretty good turnouts lately with that. We've done bingo, where we've had bingo boards I've given to everyone in the building, and it was things like you got home and you found an expo marker in your pocket, or you took home homework and you'd never actually graded it, kind of thing. Like things that would happen throughout the day. Then we handed out candy to people, like full-size candy bars once they filled up a bingo. We've played Family Feud as a staff, and we did old school versus new school. So if you've been teaching in our building less than 5 years, or if you've been teaching in our building longer than 5 years, they were competing against each other. We've done, right now, currently my SLT team every week features a new teaching team or staff team, so that includes anyone that works in the building. They were given a form to fill out, and it was, what is your name? What is your position at the school? What's your favorite candy? What's your favorite animal? Michael Smith says his favorite animal is a motorcycle, by the way, so we should ask him what that means. And so every week on the Monday announcements, the kids we hold up pictures that the teachers or the staff members submitted, like this is Miss So-and-so. She teaches whatever, or she's doing whatever, her favorite candy, her favorite animal. They've been kind of fun. The kids like watching them, getting to see the people that they work with. Gosh, there's more I know that we do.
We're planning on having another get-together.
Oh, yes, in December.
December,
I'm very excited about that one. And then our staff holiday parties and our staff end-of-the-year parties are all very well attended, and we always have a good time. We've played bingo. Like, we do a little bit of everything.
So I just want to say that, again, the foundation of all of these climate discussions really does rest in relationships and relations with building. It's not always perfect, but I think that we're very committed to being able to improve in places where we know we could and continue to kind of build on the things that we already know that we do well. So, thank you.
Good evening, Chair Allenberg, Superintendent Stanley, board members, esteemed cabinet, and guests. I'm Tim Anderson. I serve as principal at Southview. I'm pleased this evening to be joined by special education facilitator Whitney Brockla and media specialist librarian Bob Deal, who are on our leadership and climate team at Southview. Now this clicker works like this. Perfect. We were pleased this summer at the Leadership Advance, sponsored by the superintendent and assistant superintendent, to get introduced to those models that Dr. Smossel was talking about with how you manage loss and how you go through the stages of change and how you maintain dignified and create spaces, indeed the conditions, so that folks feel dignity when they show up. And as a part of that, and certainly correlated, is the work that Dr. Arriaga is doing with the tools of cultural proficiency. So as we've been doing this work, belonging has been a theme, again, sponsored by the district and certainly of interest for us at Southview. How do you create a true sense of belonging? And Arthur Chan, as highlighted by Dr. Arriaga, said this at the tools training, that diversity is a fact, equity a choice, inclusion is an action, but belonging is an outcome. And that's really resonated with the work that we've been trying to do. And one of those pieces of belonging, or one part of that work, has been this notion that we found in the literature to invite, require, and value the strengths and perspectives that are different from our own. Of course, Brene Brown and others would talk about that requires vulnerability and risk-taking, but also opens up a space for that dignity that we've been hearing about. So it's been my privilege to work with these two and other team members. As we've heard, the echoes in other people's testimony, the COVID intensity hasn't vanished. The long tail of COVID is present. It taxes us every day, and I know, we have an incredible staff. And Edina, you want to talk about defining excellence? Unbelievable work people do every day. And it's hard work, challenging work, and it's more, in many, many cases, than folks bargained for when they signed up for this. But they show up every day for kids so that each and every can realize their potential and thrive. And so it's meaningful to do this work, to try to preserve, create, nurture, and curate those spaces of belonging. I'd like to invite Whitney to share a little bit about the specifics. At middle school, we don't have the exact same culture as elementary, but she would be our captain of fun. You can tell by, the color choice of the wardrobe this evening, symbolic and substantive fun.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. So when thinking about all of that extra that Dr. Anderson mentioned and how we move our building forward in a healthy climate and culture, we did a lot of planning this summer and as we entered the fall. This entailed using and pulling the panoramic survey data that we had from the spring, as well as administering an additional survey this fall to hear from staff around where they were at and to help our planning then to move forward. So common strengths and themes that were established through the data collection both last spring and this fall were just around the appreciation of staff being student-centered. Staff felt good about that. There was also a common theme just around the teamwork and collaboration that's felt across our building at Southview and it being felt on a regular basis. Things then that we are being intentional around this year include further increasing the amount of two-way communication that we engage in as a building, which can then be used as a means to increase openness and trust. Are you clicking for me?
No, it was magically
It was,
forward.
yes. If you could keep making it happen, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thanks.
Is this where you want it?
Yeah, that's perfect. An affirmation that then came from our pulse checks was one data point that we pulled out. The average staff rating when asked, would you recommend Southview as a place of work, was a 6.7 out of 7 when you averaged everyone who completed the survey. So that felt really good to us, and it showed us that we were on the right track. As we move to the next slide, with my role specifically in special education, I've been particularly energized around the district's messaging with Dr. Arriaga that relationships precede learning. And so I've been really excited to be a part of the climate and culture work because similar in sentiment, I believe that by caring for our adults, we are then directly impacting scholar success. So to do that, we've created, as a part of our leadership team, a purposeful community task force. Our leadership team meets every week, and task forces then do work together every week as well. Some of the work of the task force for this year has looked at gratitude practices at Southview for us. Some of that work has been working to emphasize the district I care value of appreciation, done through gratitude grams and weekly kudos corners that we send out. It's also been done through podcasts, which both the superintendent as well as assistant superintendent have been featured on. Southview Matters. The podcast for Southview allows us to validate the work, perspective, and share stories of others. We have a goal on the Purposeful Community Task Force to have all voices of Southview heard and shared through the podcast, with us knowing that when your voice is heard, you are gaining a sense of belonging in the community. So the other pieces that we've been working on through Purposeful Community are increasing optional staff activities. That's the fun piece Dr. Anderson mentioned. Socials, staff gatherings, and what we coin mood boost activities throughout the building, as well as then purposeful time built into the weekly schedule for all staff members for collaboration with our ML specialists, our SPED specialists, and then grade level and content level team members. Outside of our Purposeful Community Task Force, there are 2 other pieces we wanted to highlight in terms of what we've been using to work on Purposeful Community at Southview and to increase that two-way communication among staff.
Thank you. And I don't think anybody who knows me would call me a captain of fun, but I think I did get a haircut this weekend too, though, so in preparation. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the collaboration we have with our union and our administration. We meet monthly. We invite Mr. Birdman to those meetings. And I've been in public education for 25 years. I've been a building rep for 16 of those. In another district, in many schools, I've been involved with the union, and I've never seen such a strong collaborative relationship in just partnering around issues that matter to staff and being able to trust that our administration is going to take action around the things that teachers are concerned about. It's an incredibly collaborative environment. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is the model that we use for our instructional coaches that provide another layer of support. In many places, instructional coaches, that's their full-time job. That's what they do. In the model that we have allows teachers to stay in the classroom part-time and coach part-time, and that keeps them kind of grounded in that work and helps them to be better coaches and better support for our teachers that are in the classroom.
I think we're done.
We are done.
All right. All right. Thank you for the opportunity, everyone.
Chair Allenberg has disappeared. I was about to greet her. So, Superintendent Standing, members of the board, thanks for the opportunity for being here. Andy Beaton, principal at the high school, and I have brought Dave Boone here, who's a EME rep and also a math teacher extraordinaire. So we're going to talk a little bit about some things that we recognize that were happening to us at the high school and ways that we had to lean in and really address some of these issues. I'm going to go back to the Bridges model that you saw. I don't know if I can flip back to that one. Is that too far back? I don't want to go too far back. Oh, I want to go. Oh, that's going to be really far. Okay. I think that this model really resonated with me and a lot of administrators this summer. And you think about, in a typical time, change happens. And you always think about teachers, there's those that are sort of the believers and get after it. And some people that need to be convinced and they're skeptics and before they make a change, and those people that sometimes really are difficult. But you have to think about what happened to us over the last few years. In spring of 2020, we, in emergency situations, in about 10 minutes had to go to distance learning. And then through the summer in preparation, you had Minnesota government that said we're going to go back and we'll be in person, but people can choose to be online. And that was decided for us in late August after a schedule was built. And so now we had to tell teachers, you're going to work with kids face-to-face and online. And that was kind of the model, I think, that was happening around the state of Minnesota. So then another year passed, and we were masked until February last year. And you had a lot of students that came back after those 2 years of COVID that were fairly dysregulated. Some students, especially younger students that came into our school that had significant gaps, from a behavior standpoint to just school skills to academic skills. And so when you think about this model in a typical year, and you think about fight or flight sort of responses, that can work, and any teacher and any educator can handle a crisis when it happens every once in a while in their classroom, or handle a situation or a difficult circumstance. The sustained nature, I think, that would happen to our staff over time, I think, put all of our teachers in the neutral zone in many ways. So, and I think we saw that last year. I know how hard everyone worked last year, teachers, administrators, to be able to address some of those issues, but some of those things were a challenge for us in some ways, out of our control, as the hand that we dealt. We were dealt in many ways. So our goal this year is to be able to have that dignity for our staff, to be able to create the kind of humanity that we want, the supports that teachers need, but also just we have an expectation of excellence for our students, and this model and this overlay is really for students as well. How do we support our students and push them to success? And all of us as educators, how do we continue to push to get the best out of our students, but provide the supports that we need? And everything about my core as an administrator is about removing barriers for teachers like Mr. Boone to be able to do their best work. And I think there were so many things that happened over the last couple of years that made that very difficult for teachers to do that. So one of the things that we did last year, after we got the survey data, after we heard direct feedback from staff, is we had something that I called prep talks, and these were face-to-face meetings that I did over 2 days with teachers. We talked about what was working, things that were not working, and suggestions for improvement. And we built something called work groups out of that last year. And some of the things that you see up on the screen were things related to feedback that we got from staff. So we could work as an administrative team and hit the ground running. And hallelujah for Teachers on Call. Thank you for making that happen for us. So things like virtual sub, that was at the high school last year. You have to imagine that virtual sub was built for a few classrooms where we couldn't find subs, not for all staff absences. So you can imagine at the high school, if you had 20 teachers out, which is not unusual, it can happen, times 30 kids in a classroom, how many students that we have to have supervised spaces for. So those things really, yeah, I know the answer. I think I know the answer. What's 600, right? Yeah, so, thank you. I use my calculator. No. But those things, create an environment that when you think about the work we did and how well kids did. When we look at our graduation rate and how kids did in class, but also you had that nature of challenges in terms of just the volume, the sheer volume of kids, and then how that impacts teachers being able to do the kind of instruction that they want to do. I'm going to have Mr. Boone talk a little bit about one of those work groups, because one of the things we talked about was attendance and how that team really came up with something that was creative. It really supported the administrative team, and it's really allowed us to be able to be timely in our work around attendance. Want to address some of that? Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Beaton. I'm sorry I didn't get a haircut. Apparently that was required. Yeah, and in regards to fun, I'm known as the mushroom because I'm a fun guy.
Wow.
All right.
I'll invite you back. Sorry.
Yeah, sometimes when I get a microphone, watch out. And I'll be performing this weekend. So coming out of Mr. Beaton's prep talks after the climate survey, there were kind of three main areas that were kind of identified. Attendance was one of them, our flex spaces, and then our advisory. There was an all-call put out to what teachers wanted to be part of what committees, and I think we had an overwhelming number of teachers that we actually ended up having to limit the number of teachers that could be on committees, otherwise there'd be too many. So there's certainly the appetite among the staff to assist the administration and assist the school in some improvement in culture and climate. So I served on the attendance committee and with two of our APs and several of our staff members. Really, I have to say it was a really robust committee. We really discussed some of the hard issues and were really open with each other about some of the challenges. So came up with a little bit a newer kind of attendance follow-up on contract violations or putting kids on contract, because some of the frustrations where we were seeing kids over the last year getting double-digit into the 20s, 30 absences, and we want our kids in class. So trying to work, see what can we do? What can we do to help to get this expedited, to be more efficient? So came up with some new ways that we as staff have taken on some of that responsibility and in getting the attendance contracts to our students, and rightfully so. We should be having those conversations with our students, if they're missing our class. Hopefully before that contract comes forward to say, hey, I'd like to see you in class, you've been missing class. But now it gets a little more formalized when it gets to those 3 unexcused or 9 excused absences. We agreed to present the contract to the student, say, and have those conversations, can be, just really a minute or two, so it's not a lot of time on our plate, with the promise that it would take a lot of time off the administration's plate to get to those and work with the student to find a solution on how we can best get them to our classrooms. And out of the hallways for that matter too. Because that was, I think, part of the issue too, is, looking at those flex spaces and, how kids were kind of roaming and finding ways in there. And I was not having the best behaviors, as Mr. Beaton had talked about. So, those committees seem to be working. There's kind of the word of cautiously optimistic, because things have started off really well, and how will it continue to stay and continue to grow in that. There are some things I can speak for specifically for the attendance committee. It's not perfect. There's some things we still need to address. We have plans to continue the committee to discuss some of those issues that are still out there. So it's a nice collaborative effort between the staff and administration to address some of those needs. While I'm here too, I wanted to also say that Teachers on Call, thank you. So I had to do the math real quick. That 600 people in the Commons was, a real problem. And since everybody else has been talking about it too, that's not up on our list. As a staff, we've created a fun squad that. I'm not part of that. Surprise.
You are the fun squad.
But they, find different activities for staff to do, and monthly place to go after school. There's been some game time, just some other activities that I always like to say some of our younger staff is a little more got a little more energy than. I have been there, so. But. So yeah, we're, Mr. Beaton's talked about continuing these prep talks. We do have monthly meetings as a union team with Mr. Beaton to bring back from our we call them 10-minute meetings that are really 30-minute meetings with staff that come and give us their input that we bring forward. And I'm assuming many of those things are the same things that you've been hearing at your prep talks too. Yeah. So just kind of opening the door and keeping those conversations moving forward. That is really being helpful to the culture and climate in our building.
Thanks, Dave. I want to make sure that I give enough props to the teachers on that attendance committee, because I think what happened is that we went from a system where you had assistant principals that had caseloads of almost 700 kids and being able to address those issues in a timely manner, that now that is done on that first intervention is done by the teacher. So as students, Andy Beaton has missed Mr. Boone's class for a few times. It's building relationships, and it's connecting with the student to say, hey, I want you here. Where have you been? Is there something that's going on? And those teachers can find out in terms of the relationship. This student is not feeling real competent in math right now, or they're feeling uncomfortable in the class based on where they sit, or whatever that might be, that's trying to create engagement. And we have seen some results. We're seeing that students are responding those conversations that they're having with teachers, and then we can follow up with those students that are going further, violating those contracts. It gives our APs a real fighting chance to be able to do kind of that tier 2 and tier 3 intervention. So kudos to the teacher team. So that's what we have. Thank you.
With that, I would just like to say in closing, data, pulse checks, monitoring, planning, voices, dedicated time. We heard about building relationships, solving school problems and challenges together, building belonging, and then partnership. I am honored, as always, to be able to present with such talented professionals. And with that, I will turn it back to Chair Ellenberg.
Do board members have any questions or comments?
I do. Can you see my?
You're about ready to click it.
Oh, I already clicked it. Good. Oh, okay, sorry. I got a haircut too. I just wanted to say thank you so much for this update. I'm going to steal Principal Masika's line about a pulse check. So I really appreciate that. I know we've talked a lot about climate and concern for our staff and teachers over the last 2 years, and it's part of our, our board priority. So my question is about resources, and I know that you are tapping teachers within your schools to help with this, but is there more that you need to identify, that you need to ask the board for more support? Or I just want to make sure that we're being as supportive with those goals so that it can be sustainable. And if you have ideas that you're like, wow, we really would love to do this, but we just don't have the time and the resources. So that's my question. So smirk, looking at me like, what did you just offer? But I would love to hear that, though, if there's anything else.
Thank you, Director Green. I don't know if anybody wants to answer that. Certainly, we are constantly having discussions as we meet with our administrators monthly on our monthly check-ins, and then with Superintendent Stanley on our quarterly check-ins. And we talk about climate in terms of key indicators of progress. We talk about academics in terms of key indicators of progress. So that is an ongoing dialogue, and we appreciate that question being posed. And if I hear no other responses, we're going to continue. Oh, time's up. Just kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just quickly, I appreciate you putting it out there, Mrs. Green. We are planning to invite board members, those who are kind of aligned with each of the schools, to come in and have a tour, spend some time in the schools on a regular basis. And so right now, my colleague Abe Wolfsley and I, along with Lisa, are getting together sort of a plan to invite our board member to come and visit and have a tour, spend some time in the school, and see what things are like. This is really good work, and we're committed to this goal because we feel that the working conditions and the climate in our building, it directly affects our students' learning conditions, and so we feel it's really important, and we really appreciate the initiative that the district has taken on.
At Southview, we were able to meet with our PTO team and talk more about our climate and culture goals and how we're working towards that. What's been exciting to see too is just in thinking about belonging and how we ensure that staff get that sense of belonging. We found that staff are really interested in being a part of the plans of how they feel that belonging. So finding different avenues to make sure that everybody is heard and seen and gets to be a part of that community has kind of given us some self-sustaining resource to do the work too.
That's a really interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
I have a question. How do we know which board member is aligned with our school?
It's on the website. I have a question. There's a little bit of nuance between culture and climate and stress and mental health, even though they have a lot to do with each other. And so I was wondering, in the efforts to work on culture and climate, is this effort as well, I guess I'm wondering how much of this is trying to deal with the issue, the real issue of educator mental health? Or are we more truly talking about workplace environment and the culture of the workplace and a sense of belonging in the workplace? Because like Dr. Leland alluded to, there's a lot of things about just the job of teaching that are very stressful. And so I just didn't know if those are parsed out as two separate issues, because I don't want to have expectations that this, and some of those are are deep-seated issue in public school education. So I want to make sure that I'm understanding expectations of what these groups are doing, or is there Dr. Leland, is the Wellness Committee really dealing with educator stress and some of those really deep-seated issues, and that we're matching up. Because some of the feedback we got when we were talking about, like, how can the board work with educator stress and wellness, they were like, thank you for like the thank yous and stuff like that, but these issues are way bigger and broader than that.
Yeah,
Does
maybe
that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Maybe I can start, and then Dr. Leland can jump in. So I think about climate and culture kind of on a continuum. Culture is like the long-term thing that you are establishing, and climate is the current condition. And stress and mental health, of course, are all part of this complex arena that is education in public schools. We know that part of the work are solving some of those problems and challenges that are sitting in front of us that create the stress. I think we've heard examples of that at the elementary and the middle and the high school level. And that stress untreated then leads to mental health issues as well. So it's really a both and, is we're trying to tackle challenges that are within our control to solve, knowing that not all challenges are in our control to solve in public education, but then also buoying staff through climate efforts that help give them more resiliency to handle some of those challenges, whether it is the partnership that they feel being a part of something bigger, whether it is the relationships that are deepened with others so that they can share, they can be vulnerable, they can work through things together. The relationship part of it is another way of getting at it from my perspective. So we're dealing with both of those things, but in different ways within this work, if that makes sense. Dr. Leland, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Just in terms of what you were asking, will the Wellness Committee be tackling some of those issues? And I think that our first meeting, we will be talking about the purpose and also what it is we want to do in terms of there are organizations that can come in and really help develop that trauma-informed resiliency building framework for organizations that are experiencing deep systemic trauma. And I believe that is the state of education, as you said, Chair. So I just, yes, sorry, it's getting late. That, I believe, is what we're going to pursue tomorrow night and talk through our purpose.
Thank you.
Can I talk about the research just a little bit?
Sure.
There's really deeply related and connected research about people having friends at work, people having relationships at work, and culture and climate. And that is why it's so important, as each principal and their teams shared with you, that they are really working to build those relationships, to build those reconnections, as Principal Masika talked about, that were lost during the pandemic. Very specific question at Southview that was very intentional about, would you recommend someone to work here? Because we know that when you have deep, satisfying relationships at work, you are more satisfied with your work, regardless of how complex the work is. And so that is why those relationships are so important. And it may sound small, and yet we cannot minimize that, because the research shows that that is one of the greatest aspects that impact work satisfaction.
Karen?
Thank you for your presentation tonight. This was really informative to hear, and I know that as Director Green had talked about the board goals, Superintendent Stanley's goals, when we received that panorama survey, we knew that we wanted to see some changes on that. So thank you for coming before us. And I had a similar question to what Director Green asked about resources, and kind of what Director Chair Ellenberg had asked. I think as you move forward, and we heard tonight some definite tangible things that you're working on, and I imagine as you work together, that will change every year, right? Because we'll be maybe hopefully moving farther away from COVID, and maybe those connections will take place. But as we look at budgeting, as we look at our legislative action committee work, some of those larger things where teachers might be coming forward and saying, we need more resources around multilingual learners. We need more para support. All of those things that might rise to the top. Those are things I think that, as a board member, I would be interested in hearing as those things come forward too, because although some of that is not within our control, the long game of how we allocate things that might just be important to the conversation. So thank you for all of you who are serving on the Fund Committee. That's the committee I would want to be on.
Thank you again for all your work on this. I had a couple of questions. First one was going to be around what Dr. Stanley was just referencing about the different efforts that are going in the different buildings. Is there any sharing of best practices amongst all the different schools to say the fun group and this group is having a lot of success doing this, and are we sharing that across the different schools? I know that norming has changed so much after COVID that I think that there's a lot of work that we could do as an organization to basically say that to help reestablish what the new norms are in our schools, and so I'm hoping that we share those across the different buildings, or if there's a mechanism at least. That wasn't really a question, it was more of a comment. And then I had a question to Dr. Leland about the frequency of the wellness survey. Is that going to go out on a regular basis, like annually, or is it a one-time survey?
It would be ideal if it was a pre-post, so getting our baseline now and then asking the same set of questions. I didn't go into the entire survey. There were more questions embedded, and there are some that would be really good to see what the post results are after some of the strategies we implement this year. And just to the other comment, I know it was a comment and not a question, but we did, through the survey, collect some of the great things that are happening in our buildings, and there are some really, as described tonight, some fun things that are happening. And so we've collected those in the survey, and then I will send those out to the building leaders to get their input on further initiatives they're taking as well. And then those can be shared across.
Thank you. And then the last question I just had was more from a EME perspective. Is there any efforts from the EME avenue working towards it in the state and the legislature pieces of staff mental health? I know there's a lot of commentary about student mental health. I haven't heard a lot about if there's any initiatives around staff mental health.
Yeah, there are. I can't speak to them specifically, but I know that the state organization is seeking resources in those areas. Yeah.
Thank you.
Janie?
Yep. First, I also did get a haircut too, but thanks for noticing. It's
I did get a haircut?
I did it for you, Rob, I'm just going to say.
Raise your hand if you got a haircut over the weekend.
So one of the things that I can't help but think about, and it goes back a little bit to what Dr. Anderson had said, is that, nobody signed up for what happened in the past couple of years. And I think about how if you walk into a building that has, I'm just going to 582 student, staff, faculty members, 582 people have a shared trauma, right? Nobody is immune to it. And so I think my question really revolves around, how have you brought students into this conversation, right? Like, how have we engaged students? If, say, at the secondary, it's an attendance or a discipline or an engagement question where it's frustrating teachers and it's really weighing on morale, how are we bringing students into that conversation to say, we have this shared empathy because we've all gone through this collective trauma, right? Like when I think about if I'm in an argument with my husband and I'm frustrated about something and he's frustrated about something, if we don't share those frustrations with each other, we're never going to come to resolution. And so what I didn't hear, and maybe somebody could speak to, is how have we brought students into this conversation to kind of help bring out that empathy trait that we really think is important, and how do we help them see that empathy as they move forward, right? Like making lemonade out of this lemon. How do we create
these traits that they can move forward when other things happen in their lives, you know. That's the question that I would have is have we brought in student voice into this whole process to help them help the other people in the building, right? There are way more students in any building than there are staff. And if I know anything about our students, when given the challenge, they rise to the occasion, right? Like in Dr. Anderson's shaking his head in that building when those students are asked to rise to the occasion for their teachers who they love, they will rise to the occasion. And so my question really is like, how can we engage them in this process? Because we really are, you know, a family together.
I don't know if anybody wants to take a stab at that. Andy?
Well, I would say that, you know, you look at that model around dignity, and it's parallel for both students and for staff at the same time. Students need expectations and support at the same time. Staff need expectations and support. Principals need expectations and support to do their job well. And I've always said as an educator or a student, you know, the work is hard, but if you feel like you have support and partnership, then it can still feel good, right? Think about the challenges that students overcome academically or socially and so on, and that hard work feels good, and I think that sense of efficacy is what we need to build with everybody in the system, adults and students at the same time. So we have parallel goals, at least at the high school, that are around sense of belonging that our teachers are doing at the same time, whether that's engaging with families, looking at their classroom-based interventions, looking at their assessment practices. So they're doing that as an individual teacher and teams while we're trying to build capacity for our teachers to be able to do that. So we just have to fill our teachers' cups for a little while, I think, so they can dip down into it. We've just dipped down far too often with our teachers and I think our students. So we have to just build up people's capacities again.
I would say at the middle school level too, we address that through advisory, right? So we have a really intentional advisory task force that works to plan out how do we have this shared experience with our learners where we get a chance to build community, be vulnerable with one another, and learn and grow as a home unit truly that meets every day together. And so as a part of that, we have really encompassed belonging, first by having all students complete a belonging survey that was done and gets readdressed throughout the year. And that then helps the advisor have the opportunity to see where the scholar is at and put supports in place to increase that scholar's sense of belonging and where they're at. So I might know, right, that Tim is feeling like he doesn't have any outside connections from school, right? Well, in advisory, then I can help set up when I know that 2 kids are going to do something else. Hey, I saw you guys sitting with Tim earlier. Might you guys want to all go together? And we've seen such huge success with that. Especially I'm in the Unified Advisory, and so we have a whole group of learners across the continuum, and it's so exciting to see kids increase their learner agency, dive into where am I in terms of belonging in this building, and then having peers and adults alike who can help support that growth.
I have one other question that go ahead, Dr. Stanley. Oh, sorry, Tim.
I was just going to jump in on that too.
Please.
You know, we have that advantage where we're doing circle time and advisory too. So every week, every child's voice is in space. And we built it around SEL to a degree in this belonging thing. So it's a structural, I think, support that's there. The other thing, you know, from the district office, the superintendent is running superintendent advisory panels. You know, just my informal interactions, for example, with kids who I get to hang out with the superintendent and my voice gets to be on there, and then I get to tell my principal some ideas, because usually Dr. Anderson's talking to me. So now I get to talk to him a little bit. I mean, that's nice modeling too, I think, that cascades down throughout the system. So, you know, I think we're at the front edge of what this could be, and it's promising, I think.
I just had, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I've been sitting on this one quote back here, just listening to the culture and climate, the mental health, the pieces, and you know how we take care of that. It's a Richard Branson quote. Some of you might be familiar with it. It just says, "You take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers." To heart with that, with teachers and students, you know, you take care of us, we'll take care of the kids.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt anyone. My curiosity question is this, as these wonderful programs that have been outlined tonight, and as we continue to move forward on trying to improve what results we saw in the Panorama survey, I'm curious as to if and when you have individuals within a building who are not engaged in the activities that you just outlined. And I'm curious, how do you find or how do you identify any individual who might not be engaged in those things because it doesn't speak to them or doesn't connect to them? How do you reach out or how do you engage them in whatever way you can so that they're not the outlier? It's easy to somehow us feel like, well, we get to the 78%, that kind of fits the bubble, but the outliers we kind of don't have an easy pathway to get to. But in order for us to be ultimately successful and including what we just heard as far as taking care of everybody helps us take care of the customer, I'm just curious if anyone has any thoughts about, maybe you're not having that, but I'm just assuming just by law of averages, you're going to have some people that are outside that scope. Please.
So we do ours during the contract hour. So when we meet together and we do these fun events, I don't feel like building relationships with the people you work with is optional. You need to, I have everybody on a committee, everybody is working towards a common goal, and so I think it's really important that we include some of those things. I know Director Green had asked about what kinds of resources might we need, and to me, it's challenging because I think the biggest common denominator is time. And so what I see in our building, we have weeks where we have no meeting weeks. And the idea behind it is so people can feel like they have the time to get things done. There are other things that we gain from that. So on no meeting weeks, it's probably the most I hear about conversations in the office after school because people are free to go make copies and do whatever they need to do. But the fact is that they're sitting there and they're building a relationship, right? Because when you go to the copier, when you go to the mailbox, you're actually talking to Heather and saying, hey, what did you do this weekend? Or those kinds of things. And so I think trying from an administrator's perspective of how do we get creative on creating those moments or times for people, and we get these outcomes that were maybe unexpected, but also are helping to build those relationships. And again, that just breeds into a more positive climate because now I've built a relationship with Heather because I talked to her while I was standing, for the 10 minutes in the copy room. And so I think those are the pieces where we really have to just be mindful of what are the stressors, what is affecting people's mental health. Oftentimes it's just, we know how we all feel when we have too much to do and we don't feel like we can get it done and we're not successful. Even if you can plug through those, you feel kind of drained. And so if we can create those moments for people to build relationships, to feel like they can build some success and feel like they have the time to do the work that we've asked them to do. Because quite honestly, I don't have teachers at Cornelia that say, I won't do the work. It's when am I going to find time to do all the work that I'm being asked to do? And so I think it's trying to be creative with the resources that we have and building some of those things into their typical workday, that building a relationship with the people that you work with every day is a part of your job, and not asking for more extra outside of. And so I just know for Cornelia, that's how we structure it, just so that we can make sure that we're including everybody, so.
I would offer that that's what that Bridges transition model is really about, is really trying to understand how people are going through a change or not going through a change, and then investing in understanding the losses that people are feeling as you go through endings, and then using some of the strategies in the model to move through the transition zone. So that's really the intent of that model, is to give us all tools for how to navigate that, because we know that individuals move at different paces, and so we need to work through that.
I was just gonna say that, last year, we talked to our staff about trauma and asking, are we doing things as a system that create trauma for kids? And so that's reflective for educators. But then as a system, are we doing things that create trauma for staff, within our systems? So, we can get as many therapists as we want, and we have to have something in place to deal with symptoms of that. But I think on the other side, we have to be doing things that prevent trauma from happening to kids. There's some layers of stress that are good. There's a good amount of stress that can happen, but there's a tipping point that happens. So I think those are the things that we have to try to address. I mean, I think we can, our fun squad is kind of choose your own adventure, for people joining happy hours or going to play lawn games or things like that, which is awesome. But there's also people that, they're taking care of an elderly parent, or they've got kids with their own issues at home. So they want to be able to do their job during the day and do it effectively. So we have to have those things in place for them to feel like I can be a highly effective teacher during this time, even if I'm not
Exactly.
coming to the
That's kind of what I was getting at, is that it's not going to fit everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I hate to move us along, but it's after 9, so.
Thank you.
Very important conversation, great conversation. Thank you, everyone. We're now going to move on to our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? And I just want to note that Director Green is going to be abstaining from voting on the consent agenda items. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We will now vote to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. We're going to move on to discussion items. First up is Edina Public Schools Data Metrics Plan. We have Director of Teaching and Learning, Jody D. St. Hubert, Greg Gusweiler, Teaching and Learning Data Programming Analyst and Coordinator. That's a mouthful. Mark Carlson, Curriculum Coordinator, and Bethany Van Osdol, Assistant Director in Teaching and Learning. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Allenberg, Dr. Stanley, board members, colleagues, and community members. I'm excited to be here with my team today, talking a little bit more about our data metrics plan. The data metrics plan is a comprehensive assessment monitoring plan using a variety of data points to help us determine and examine where we are as a system in relation to meeting our vision, mission, and strategic plan. This report is baseline data, and it is organized in a vertical progression of early learning center, elementary school, middle school, high school, social and emotional learning, post-secondary pursuits, and unique learners. The data to be gathered in each area was approved by the board in February 2022. There are some baseline data points not able to be gathered from last spring. Those are noted with an asterisk in the report, and with the addition of our universal screening to the Edina assessment plan for 2022-23, all data will be able to be collected this spring. The ultimate goal is that the data metrics plan is presented as a coherent set of data points wherever possible, highlighting that not one data point can tell the complete story of how we are doing as a system, or how our schools are doing, or how students are doing. Understanding our proficiency and growth requires a deeper understanding and looking at multiple data points and having multiple conversations. The depth of the work in this report is depicted in the executive summary that is at the beginning of the report. The executive summary highlights key findings, it highlights action steps in relation to the key findings, and it highlights the strategic plan areas that are in alignment to the action. The executive summary ends with a list of critical next steps in response to the baseline data. So with that, we'll open it up for questions and feedback.
Board members, questions, feedback?
I just have one question. Can you just share a little bit about how the district plans to use this data moving forward for planning? Talk to that. I know we talked about it some in the work session.
Yep, absolutely.
Excuse me, but I think it would be great to hear that again.
Absolutely. So that was an added component right at the end of the executive summary. There's a couple of key areas highlighting how we'll plan to use the data. One area is specific in our district instructional leadership meetings. And so that's a group of administrators led by Dr. Stanley, where we'll be looking at the baseline data and doing some root cause analysis and investigating as to what's happening with the data, what patterns we're seeing, and what goals then we can set in response. So that's one key action next step, looking at the baseline data, determining what needs are and how we can move forward in meeting those needs, and setting goals specifically in that team, and then then making sure that that goes out to other groups as well. The other important part that I want to point out in the plan is that we've really tried to tie what current plans are in place with what we're seeing in the data. So we have our comprehensive literacy plan. We have many plans that are in place that connect really closely. And then there are certain dates within the executive summary. We'll be bringing a report back about our multilingual learners. We'll be bringing a board report back about our talent development learners, as report coming back about special education. All of that will be happening as we move into the 2023 school year.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
I had a quick question, if I may, Chair. When you talk about the effects of the pandemic as far as what's in the results, as I read in the executive summary, do you have an anticipation of what time period is necessary for the pandemic results to become less and less impactful to the results?
That's a really good question.
I know.
I think there are experts nationally who are
It's late. It's late.
Yeah,
I'm just I've been sitting here quiet for a long time.
You guys should be
so-
on CNN
Sorry,
or like
I'm
Wall
so
Street
sorry.
Journal if you can answer that.
I apologize.
Right, exactly. I was going to say, no, don't apologize. It is an important question, and I don't have a direct answer, but I know there are many experts all around the nation looking at that important information. And so we will lean into that research and the information that these experts are learning, and definitely help us in our planning and our goal setting.
And forgive me, what I didn't really mean to say it that way. What I meant was more of like, I recognize the validity of the executive summary acknowledging that component. I think it's important for us as we speak about, as we look forward and how we're going to use it, as Director Green asked, how we have some thought process to when does it become less of an impactful area. And even though we don't know the answer to that today, I think we need to be proactive about talking about what that is rather than reactive to it. I think that's where I was trying to go with my question, so forgive me for my blatant approach to that.
Absolutely important that we
Okay,
keep that in mind.
thanks,
in the
Jody, appreciate it.
planning.
Other board members?
Mine's more of a comment, and I think I've shared it before, but I feel as if I would be remiss if I didn't publicly state it again, because we're talking about content now. The summative assessment for 10th grade ELA is of great concern to me, and I look forward to there's all kinds of data in here, but it's when I look at something like that, I look forward to the further discussions that this whole plan will allow us to have in setting priorities. That one it hits me really hard because those are our current 11th graders. Next year will be 12th graders and will not be able to benefit from any work that we do in our comprehensive literacy plan. And so there's pieces like that cause me to pause and to say that, I just think they need to be, now that we have that data, we need to be really intentional about how we can use it, because those are real students there. So I just want to put that out there. It's not so much a question. I know we've talked about it.
Thank you for this report, and it is, I'm glad you asked that question because it is important to know, as a large report, how we're going to use this. There was just kind of a clarification, not for you, but for anybody that's reading this report, and maybe you can help me with this too. And I wrote down the page number, and now I think the page numbers have changed, so that's of no help. But when it indicates 10.19% of special ed students met their goal, correct me if I'm wrong, that can be a little misleading because to meet the goal means you're completely dismissed sometimes from special ed. And so you might be making progress on a goal. So it can look like, wow, that's a huge red flag, but that means you'd be, and some of our students will never be dismissed from special ed. So they're just making progress towards that goal. So that was something that I kind of wanted to say for the greater good as reading that data point. So. Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you putting that in the space, and the large number of students making progress is something to celebrate, and we'll look forward to hearing more about where we're at with our special education in 2023, right around the corner, I think, by Director Remsing. The numbers did change quite often.
I just wanted to thank you guys on camera recorded for the work that went into doing this. And I think it's going to be such a useful tool for our district, identifying, like just what Director Shaw said, really drilling into how do we shift resources, identify areas of concern, identify areas where we're doing a great job. Being able to track data year over year, which we haven't, except in very isolated cases, been able to do. It's so important to the integrity of our district and being able to just know how we're doing. I'm so thankful for this and thankful for the work and the leadership of Dr. Stanley and Dr. Smalzel and everyone that's worked on this. So even though it obviously points out some things we need to work on, the fact that we can even point out things we need to work on is so important. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. Next, we're going to be discussing substitute pay rate with Director of Human Resources, Sonia Saylor, and Director of Business Services, Mert Woodard. Welcome.
Good evening. So we're here tonight to talk about a discussion item, which is wage rates for substitute teachers and substitute paraprofessionals. I met with the Finance Committee a week ago today, on the 7th, to talk a little bit about background on this as well. So we continue to be in a situation where we have a staffing shortage, of course, as we all know, in the state and in this country, and school districts are simply having a very difficult time hiring substitutes, substitute teachers and substitute paraprofessionals in particular. As you know, this year we went to a staffing company called Teachers on Call, which overall has been doing a very good job for us. But because we did not have substitutes in our district for more than 2 years prior to this, we didn't start the year with a really large sub pool. Today, right before we started our work session, I spoke to Teachers on Call again to get an update on how many subs do we have now that have signed up and have selected Edina schools. Last time I checked with them a few weeks ago, it was 138. Today it was 161, which is fantastic. But my second question to them was, how many of those 161 have subbed in Edina Public Schools? And a number of people have, of course, signed up recently, so they're very new, so it makes sense that they haven't subbed, but 51 of those 161 have not subbed in Edina Public Schools. So they have expressed that they would like to sub in Edina. They have selected Edina, but they haven't subbed in Edina. And it is likely that it's because we're just slightly lower than our neighbors in substitute wage rates. I came to you in the summer when we set sub rates for this year. At that time, we were very competitive with our neighbors. Since that time, most of the school districts around us have raised their rates. Some have actually raised their rates twice since that time, because we are in a situation where everybody is fighting for the same substitute pool. And so we want to improve what is called our fill rate. And our fill rate is the number of absences that we have. Right now, it's just teachers that we use Teachers on Call for that actually need a sub, because some teachers don't need a sub depending on the type of position. And then the number that are filled, of course, that creates our fill rate. Because we use Teachers on Call, I'm able to get some information about what our average fill rates in our area. Our average fill rate as of October 31st was 63% at that time. In our surrounding area, slightly over 80, not quite 81, about 80.4, I think, percent, something like that. I will tell you, in the last couple of weeks since that time, our fill rate has fallen a little bit, but it probably has fallen everywhere during this time because we're going into November. Once you're in November, once you're in December, January, February, it becomes more difficult, and always has become more difficult, just because we were into cold and flu season on an average basis too. So different school districts have used some different kind of creative ways to try to attract subs to their districts. One is, of course, simply raising their sub rates. We are at $70 for a half day, which is 4 hours or more, $165 for a full day, and that also includes a very small number of retired Edina subs that we have, Edina teachers that have signed up to be daily subs in our school district. I think we have about 8 that do that. And then $175 for a full day if you're a building substitute. And what that means is you have signed up to sub within our school district and actually within a specific building anywhere between 3 to 5 days a week. And most of our buildings now, that's 5 days a week. In their surrounding area, the average now is for that daily sub rate that we're paying $165 for is closer to a little over 180, about 182. The building sub rate, which we're paying $175, is now almost universally $200 a day. And then there are a number of school districts that have also instituted incentives to work on Mondays and Fridays. So they are paying $200 a day for their Mondays and Fridays. In Edina, the most difficult day for us to fill is Fridays. Mondays, I hate to say this out loud, but Mondays so far have not been as difficult as Fridays for us, which is the way it's always been, of course, because we have people taking personal leave and people having life's events that are going on, and so we just have more people that take Fridays off. So when a substitute is not available, there are a number of different things that happen. Of course, the principals kind of quickly have to decide how they're going to rearrange the building for that day. Sometimes it means that you don't have specials. So elementary students aren't going to specials and they're using specialists. Sometimes it means, particularly at the secondary level, that teachers are losing their prep times because they're being assigned to cover for another teacher during their prep time. And sometimes it means, particularly at the elementary level, that you're taking a classroom that's not covered, breaking up the students into smaller, more manageable numbers and redistributing them across a number of classrooms. All of those things are, of course, tough on teachers because all of those things add to their workload, take away their prep time. And all of those things are expensive because they all, of course, cost money. In addition, through our teachers' contract, teachers, if they're put in that position, are entitled to receive what we call their pro rata rate, which ranges anywhere, if we use the average, anywhere between, let's see here, I think it's $485 a day for elementary. Let me just double check here. Yes, and with benefits, $524 a day at the elementary, $436 a day, $509 with benefits at the secondary level. So when it comes to paraprofessionals, we posted a job posting over a month ago to hire paraprofessionals in our school district. I'm actually really pleased to say that since last weekend, we have 2 applicants, which is great because those are the first 2 applicants we've received in over a month for that position, and we are going to move quickly on those, although they have applied for other positions within the district, so they may get scooped up for something else. Right now, the last time that the board acted on paraprofessional substitute rates was in the fall of 2021, when you set it at 85% of their step 1 rate as well. And so although we are not necessarily bringing a recommendation today, we are recommending that we look at an increase to the wage rates that we bring to a future board meeting for, as an action item, to try to improve our fill rate, ease some of that from that added burden from our teachers at this time, and then also allow us to pull together, we hope, of maybe a small team of paraprofessional subs that would actually be employees of our school district that we could just place in really the most difficult situations within the district where we have the most paras out in a given day. Right now, for paraprofessionals, what the buildings have been doing, if they can get someone, is they've been assigning a teachers on call sub to do that, which is great in a pinch, but it's already difficult enough to get enough teacher subs for our teachers, and frankly, it's more expensive as well to use a teachers on call sub versus a paraprofessional sub that works for our school district. So with that, let me just take a quick peek here. Okay. I think that our, at this point, we just open it up for some questions.
Thank you for this information and kind of the background and the comparison. Specifically with the paraprofessional substitutes, I would think that we possibly are also getting into a legal issue, right? If there's not care for some of those students?
Yes, Director Gabler, thank you for bringing that up. So that's a conversation that we've had with Director Remsing as well, that we want to ensure that when paraprofessionals are called for in IEPs, that we have someone available whenever possible to assist within the building. Often what happens is the substitute may not be the one that works with a one-on-one, but they'll be able to then free somebody else up that maybe works with a small group of students or in another area within the building to then go and work with a one-on-one student who needs that additional care, and it's in their IEP.
Anyone else?
Guess I have a question for Mert. So I'm, in my limited time on the board, there have been a number of meetings where we've had relatively ad hoc requests to change compensation. And, obviously these are different times for all of us, dealing with inflation, dealing with labor shortages that are unprecedented. But school district budgetary challenges remain unchanged. And I'm, concerned about how we responsibly respond to legitimately urgent situations and important situations relating to core mission, but also make sure that a year from now or 2 years from now, our fund balances aren't in danger and we're cutting things that are even more critical because we've been responding to emergencies as they arise, rather than having a very coordinated plan, always keeping the big picture in mind.
Thank you for the comment and question, Director Goldstein. I'll remind you that in June of 2022, the board did appropriate a budget of about $1.12 million for the purposes of substitute teachers. We believe that this action would increase the expenditures by about $70,000 to $100,000, and we are on pace to be within that budget, give or take $100,000. So I think that this action would not critically impinge on the district's future financial forecast.
I think it might be good the next, along with this or soon thereafter, in, that we could see some of that larger picture about our fund balance and some of these other issues, because I think that's been the outstanding question about some of these things as they come along. And it would just be good to have a grounding in does that forecast look like?
Absolutely, and that process will begin at the next regular board meeting on
Okay.
December 13th.
Perfect.
So if I can just follow up. So when the board, I wasn't here when the board approved that budget, but was there anything, when that amount was approved, was there an expectation for increases, or why was that money left aside?
I can't speak as to the intention regarding increases. However, the board typically will appropriate a budget in that amount for the purposes of substitute teachers exclusively.
Not to put you on the spot, but, and maybe just to lead, since this was supposed to be discussion, but, I think it would be helpful to know what kind of a cushion has been in the budgets in the past, and what, what's happened in the past to sort of help us understand what's happening now.
May I ask a clarifying question? Are you saying this evening you're looking for that, or are you saying as they move it forward in December when they come for action, that's something that, even though I know Director Collins, you wouldn't be here, and that the rest of the board would want to have that information as well?
For the future, because I think when finance discussed this, and I think, finance was both concerned about the situation, but also concerned about the solution, there was an expressed willingness to get this before the board for discussion sooner rather than later, so that everyone had a chance to think about it and maybe, determine what more information might be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, that's reasonable and something that we could look into to see what has happened with past budgets.
Absolutely, and if I may just add one more comment, the alternative, which would be to pay our currently staffed licensed teacher their hourly rate, would be, in fact, far more expensive than this action.
And just for clarity, there was, I think there are tough questions to be asked. I wasn't trying to communicate that I think this should be decided one way or the other, and I don't think the Finance Committee felt that way either. We just had questions.
Absolutely.
May I ask a clarifying question? So, given the budget that was approved, and now we're taking this potential action, we're considering this action, is the use of that budget today, we haven't used as much of it because we haven't been able to necessarily fulfill the needs from a substitute hiring process, and that's why we have some available funds related to this, is that correct?
Yes and no. The pro rata rate paid to teachers does eat into that so-called savings. And so we haven't been able to fully understand what the difference is as of this time.
Okay, thank you.
Do you guys have the information you need to bring back to us?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Anything else? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to policy review.
Thank you, Chair Allenberg. We have 6 policies up for discussion tonight. 3 of the policies are in the 100s. And so we have been working with the administration on these policies in our committee work. And just as a reminder, I'm just going to take my notes here. The policy committee meets monthly to review these policies. Many of these policies are reviewed every 4 years. Some of the policies that we look at are renewed annually, and all of them are compared to statute changes. In addition, we look at clarity with with district practice and how these are being implemented. We also align them to our strategic plan and core values, and we also use MSBA for guidance and review of these policies. So, for the first 100s, policy 106, 109, and 110, I'm going to pass it to Dr. Smazel, I think, is coming up.
So, Dr. Smazel, do you want to come up? And then I'll talk about it with you. Okay.
And we'll start with policy 106, school district goals and school improvement goals.
So before you, you have the process that we use to set our school district goals as well as our continuous school improvement goals. There are items within the policy that were struck specifically because there's no longer legislation or statute that are related to that. So for instance, in 3, Roman numeral 3, you'll see that rather than it being school district goal setting, world's best workforce legislation actually came into place since this policy was actually reviewed last time. And so we have moved it to align with language within that legislation, which we talked about earlier. Dr. Smazel had mentioned that we've moved from a traditional school improvement planning process to a continuous school improvement goals process, where we are meeting, Dr. Smazel's meeting monthly with the principals. I meet, both of us meet quarterly with the principals to really hone in, focus on goals, really dig into their progress toward their key indicators of progress toward meeting those goals. And so we felt it was important to really update the policy so that it aligned with our actual practices. The other information you'll see we have moved more in alignment with language that we use within that policy.
Great, thank you. Do board members have any questions about policy 106?
So I have a question, and I apologize since I missed last policy meeting because I was not feeling well. I know we had talked about under section 3, or maybe it was only my feedback that I gave, and no one agreed with it, and that's fine as well. The way I read this policy is that it's a broad district-level policy, and that we're talking about school district annual goal setting. So then when you go to section 2, as a district, how do we set goals? To me, that's different than our world's best workforce goals, because we as a district go through board and superintendent goals, and those are aligned with should be aligned with our data metrics plan. And so I guess I'm confused why, since we have a world's best workforce policy, why this section 3 would not be broader and speak to the process that our improvement goals that Stacy actually has every year, which are our annual goals for our district, which to me would be what we would speak to in here.
We did have a conversation about that. I don't know.
And that's probably what I missed, because I was sick. So I
Policy
apologize that I missed that entire thing.
That's okay. You want to?
Okay, so we did have a conversation about that. And really, our strategic plan actually guides my goals. And so we thought it was very important to leave the strategic plan in there, because that guides my goals. Ultimately, well, that guides your goals, which guides my goals, which then cascades throughout the system. Rather than say a data metrics plan, we built in the data reports so that it's broad. I mean, we have a data metrics plan now, but that it includes that. reality is, through legislation, we are required to report on World's Best Workforce, and they are working in tandem instead of running parallel to one another now. The data metrics plan, as well as the World's Best Workforce plan, is working in tandem, as Director DeSaint Hubert and her team talked about this evening. So through the lens of administration, it made sense to leave that in there.
Does that answer your question?
It does. I don't necessarily agree, but that's fine. To me, it makes more sense to call it district goal setting and make it broader, but I'm not going to argue if I'm a minority of one, so.
Well, I'll ask the rest of the board members if they.
Well, just a point of clarification. So the way I'm reading it as it's presented here versus how you're suggesting it, Chair, is that the world's best workforce is a key element. It's not the singular one. It's the key element for things because we're obligated by statute to do so. And then the continuous school improvement goals are the second component. But almost all the things related to world's best workforce encapsulates things that that not only we're required to do, but we would want to do. And the continuing school improvement goals is the second element that's identified. Is there something that falls outside of those two that would meet your school district goal setting parameters that you're talking about?
Can I throw another, because I would read it as school district goal setting as the title, and as defined by World's Best Workforce, start the paragraph there. Like that's, I guess I agree that the title of World's Best Workforce to me is somewhat limiting, even though I know that it is required, but I see it more as defined by the World's Best Workforce, the school district annual improvement goals aligned to blah, 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 versus that being, and I don't know if that's what you're saying, Erica. It feels narrow having it be that.
I actually agree with, like, our strategic plan should define our improvement goals.
Correct.
So I'm just getting, in my mind, confused as to where World's Best Workforce comes into play. And maybe it's saying the assessment results of the goals will be shared in a public hearing through like our World's Best Workforce. I feel like we're like sort of conflating two.
Is it fair to say
different
that,
processes.
as Janie was just saying, that the main header is the school district goal setting and World's Best Workforce and continuous school improvement are subheadings to that?
So, I'm sorry, I can bring some more clarity to that. So it used to be with state legislation that school districts had to set goals under No Child Left Behind. And those goals were required to be posted. School improvement plan goals were required to be posted. Along the way, World's Best Workforce came along, and it took the place of that. Now, ours is much more comprehensive than just what the World's Best Workforce is looking at. And so I said, again, that's why we have those running in tandem with one another as opposed to parallel. Now, I will say, we're not necessarily married to that, and if it's really important for that to be changed for policies, because they are board policies, we are certainly willing to change that.
Part of what the policy is laying out are some of the different components that make up those goals, whether it's strategic plan, continuous school improvement, World's Best Workforce. We removed the staff development piece because the legislation around that had changed, so we eliminated some of that. But as you go down through it, continuous school improvement laid out in 5. Goals, the district mission, vision, values.
5C refers to data metric plan, so the assessment and evaluation tools are outlined in the district data metric plan.
So like, where do your goals fall into this? I think that's where I'm confused.
I don't believe that my goals are supposed to fall into this.
I would agree with that.
I would agree
I think
with that,
this
too.
this is truly for district and school improvement planning. And so this isn't necessarily my goals, that it's monitoring. That would probably be a different policy that the board could create under 200s. But right now, this is truly about, it's truly about student learning, and it's about the processes at the district level and school level that help support that.
Okay.
So I just want to get clarification on, can I just see like a show of hands if we leave it as is? Or if we want to change 3 to be more encompassing language? So do you guys want to leave it, who wants to leave it as it is? 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's fine.
We're going to leave it as it is then, okay? And 106 will come for action. That was a great discussion. Board members, okay, moving on to policy 109, I believe. These changes to this policy are pretty straightforward. It was really giving clarification, and I'll let Dr. Stanley, Dr. Smalls will talk more to if anyone has any questions, but really it was getting more clarification and common language on what we consider committees and what we consider task forces. We use it interchangeably quite often within the district, so this was just giving clarity to those teams and what each team does. And so I don't know if you want to add anything, Dr. Smazel or Dr. Stanley, to this one.
Okay, so really specifically, as Director Green said, oftentimes we interchange the idea of a committee and a task force. A committee is standing. It's designed to be longitudinal. It's designed to be established. A task force is something that is brought into place that's designed to be short-term. That short-term could be 3 months, that short term could be 6 months, but it's short term. And so we felt like that's the language that we are really using within our district. It's important then to add that language into our policy because, again, the last time the policy was updated was in 2011. Really, then it just moved to definitions that we're actually using within the system. Just to make it clear, especially as we have more families enter into our system who aren't familiar with it, more, our staff enter into our system who aren't familiar with it. It was just important to update that language. Would you add anything else, Dr. Smalzel?
No, I think that's a great summary. It's just trying to be clear about how we view these items across the district, and I think these changes help bring some clarity to that for our staff members.
Great, thank you. Do board members have any questions about this policy?
I've got one, and it has to do with just the consistency of the term advisory when referencing committees and task forces. I feel like it's, if we could consistently use the word advisory.
Oh, add it in?
Add it in. So sometimes we say advisory committee and task force, and sometimes we just say committee or task force. I just think for consistency's sake and the general definition of it, to keep advisory in all of those places would be helpful.
That's a great add. Does anyone have any issues with that? Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, excellent. We'll make that change, and that'll come to action in December. And then our next policy to talk about is Policy 110, School District Decision-Making Process. And I'm going to pass this back over to Dr. Smazel and Dr. Stanley.
Do you want to go ahead and start with this one, or I can start too?
Go ahead.
That's okay.
I'll fill in if needed.
We'll work on it together. Okay, so there are a few changes. They're not significant, but some of the language that we've started to use is design teams. And so we thought that it was clear, oftentimes when we're bringing it, just like tomorrow, we have Director D. St. Hubert shared that we are bringing together a design team for 612 pathways. And so we thought that it's important, again, to just really clarify the language that we're using. You know, we've moved from school improvement planning to continuous school improvement planning. It's been several years, probably well over a decade, that we've adopted the TeamWorks International model. We still continue to use those frameworks. For instance, you'll note that oftentimes when members of the cabinet are bringing a new process that we're examining together, they will refer to the guiding change document. What's really great is you're able to see the genesis of where this comes from, the seminal work of where those guiding change documents come from. We felt like it's very important to leave those in there. We, as an administration, are certainly using all of the different frameworks within our work behind the scenes when we're working with teams of individuals, whether it's task force or committees. And then, in addition to that, we felt like it was important to leave in I'm going to get the name of the appendix. Can't remember if it is Appendix 2.
Yeah.
The Appendix 2, because that really provides clarity for anyone in the community who's interested in sitting on a committee or a task force, what their roles are within there, just what their role would be and what the role of that task force or their committee would be.
Yeah, I was just going to share that Appendix 2 creates a lot of clarity across the system for who has input when in a process and then where the decision maker lies. I think sometimes we have conflict in the system because it's unclear who's making the decision, and so this is an attempt to really clarify that across the system.
Great, thank you for setting that up for the board. Does board members have any questions on this one? Nope. Great, excellent. That'll come for action next month. And then the next two are Policy 201, Legal Status of the School Board, and Policy 202, School Board Officers. Policy 201 has really just statute reference changes for the most part. There's not much substantial in that policy. Does anyone have any questions about Policy 201, legal status of the school board? No, great. We'll move on then. And then the next policy, Policy 202, school board officers. It's important to note that this policy actually came and was reviewed by Director Wallen-Friedman and Chair Allenberg in 2020, and so it had just been recently reviewed. The reason it's coming back up again in this review cycle at this moment is just to keep us on track so that everything's back in the same time frame. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about this one either. Sure, go ahead, Michael.
I had one. It's not so much that it's in the policy because it's missing here, but when we've gone through the process of assignment, we've assigned vice clerks and things and so on and so forth, even those are not actually identified roles within the policy. So I wanted to use this opportunity just as a question to say, does it need to be a part of the policy? We're going to continue that practice, or if it's not in the policy, then we would then abandon that practice. I'm just not sure if that's important or not.
Well, under 3, it talks about organization, and it does include vice chair, clerk, treasurer, and other officers.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Okay, under assistant treasurer and assistant clerk. My bad, I'm sorry. What I meant was that something that we were going to continue doing? Because I thought there was questions that had come up previously when we were talking about assignments for that. Did those still make sense? And that we then are obligated to then continue to assign under those purposes?
Oh, I understand what you're asking. I don't know if that would be on the docket for our retreat, but if that were to come up, then we could always just pull this policy back and revise it.
Yeah, I didn't know if this is our only opportunity to discuss that or it needed to come later, but if it can come later, if we decide to go down that road, so be it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Sure. Any other questions on this one? Okay, great, excellent. And then our last policy up for discussion, I'm going to bring up Director D. St. Hubert. It is our travel policy. As you recall, we had discussed this, it had gone back to committee, working on a lot of research and information. So I will pass it along to Director Deacon Hubert.
Okay, thank you. Travel changes brought to policy were really in response to COVID and the uncertainties that come with travel in our current reality. And so at Policy Committee, we looked at a couple of key areas. The first that I wanted to point out was they're both really the edits that have been made are in the appendix part of the policy. But the first one is under Appendix 1D. And we talked about the relation to the approval process. And so when somebody submits an approval for international travel, there's a list of things that we want to be included in that. And we added to include what the travel organization that we're working with, what their insurance plan is. And so that needs to be part of what's submitted in that first approval round. And then we also added that with that, a parent communication plan needs to be included so that we're being very transparent and open with parents about what the agency that we're working with is offering for travel, for insurance, and that's clear and that families know what they're getting into with each experience. So that was the first one that I wanted to bring to your attention. We also talked through the component of, in the plan, there was originally under D, a final travel approval schedule. So it seemed to indicate that something that was already approved needed to come back to the board. What we put in there was that it only needs to come back to the board if there are changes to the plan, which could happen, right, in our current reality. And so just being cognizant of that, that cycle that we have in place for travel and that adjustment in the policy. The final thing that I wanted to point out was just some wording around the insurance that we had listed there. So the insurance offerings, there are several places that we added wording around what we would ask with the insurance. And so that is highlighted throughout the Appendix 1 there as well. The insurance offerings must be included in the proposal, which I just highlighted. And then also we put in wording that in A1 that insurance is offered and strongly encouraged for families, as well as some additional statements in 3. And that highlights the additions to make sure that families are understanding the insurance. Are there any questions around that? I
think Janie, Director Shaw, do you have a question?
Go ahead. Mine are super nitpicky.
Okay.
On I, where we added the insurance part, should it
Yes.
say parents/guardians to be consistent?
It should. Absolutely, thank you.
And then my second one is super duper nitpicky.
No problem.
On page 237 in the board packet, number 1, there's an extra E at the end of the sentence.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
didn't want you guys to
237
miss.
in board packet?
I didn't want you guys to miss that.
Okay.
Do you have it?
I have it written down and I will look for it. I have
That's my
a
value.
different thing printed, so
That's
I
my
don't have the
value
right-
add for the whole
Yeah.
rest of the board meeting.
Thank you.
It's 538-12 on that page.
Okay, now JD can say something much more,
Oh, wow, very end, okay.
More
much better than-
substantive,
Yeah, more substantive than me.
My only question was, it's more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of a suggestion for the Appendix 3, which is the extended travel release of liability. I had a wondering if we could add an acknowledgement for a decline of trip protection or travel insurance in there, just for families to have actually a specific place to say that I am acknowledging that I've declined
I
that.
understand what you're saying. Okay, yep.
So that's just a reformat of the form, but just a highlight. I think it's just for the protection of our families, for what we've seen for the past few years. I would absolutely hate for families to lose any monetary.
Yeah, I think that would bring clarity to around the
Yeah.
conversation that we had about making sure that our communication is really crystal
Yeah,
clear. So that would
exactly.
add another layer.
Yeah, so we're not saying they have to have it, even though I'm not opposed to that. But it is just a double check of, hey, you're aware, we're aware, you're aware, we're all on the same page that this has been declined. It's pretty standard in the industry, and so I just think it wouldn't hurt us.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion and addition. I don't know if any other board members are opposed to that. No, great. Okay. Excellent, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So all these, you'll see these all back in December for action. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if everyone is aware, but I'm super excited I can utilize Policy 203 that does not allow us to go past 10 o'clock in our board meetings without a vote from the board. So, do I have a motion to extend our board meeting to 10:45?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of extending our board meeting to 10:45, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is approved. Since we have been going a long time, does anyone need a short recess? To use, I mean, I won't say the obvious. Why don't we take a little break and come back at 10:05? We're on recess.
and a conversation that we've been having in a couple of work sessions with the board. And we want to go back just for a moment to some earlier conversation that has happened over the last couple of years, in particular with the Morris-Leatherman surveys, where one of the things we learned from our community is that there was a desire to increase the amount of language learning opportunities that families had across the district. It was one of 3 top program recommendations for elementary programming enhancements that was requested through that Morris-Leatherman community satisfaction survey or parent satisfaction survey. We also know that we've had ongoing wait lists at Normandale Elementary for language for many, many years. And both of those items were conversations through our strategic planning process about how do we address some of the needs of families, and one of those being the desire for language opportunities. And so that through that strategic planning process, looking at some of our programs across the district, we brought a proposal in November of 2021 for the board to approve a 2-way dual Spanish language program at Countryside Elementary. When we did approve that program, there were a lot of questions about, well, what does that mean? What is that going to look like at Countryside? We know at Countryside we also have other programs that are happening. We have the Continuous Progress Program. We have site-based special education programming. Then we have neighborhood school. So one of the things that we set out to do is to really dig into what does that mean for Countryside? What does it mean for the community? Let's explore that more. One of the reasons that we did select Countryside as the site is because Countryside had space for a district-wide program because of the current amount of open enrollment that is at Countryside, being about 30%. Just because of the nature of the draw of the community, it allows for about 30% open enrollment, and that gave us an opportunity to offer a district-wide program. Replacing that open enrollment, backing it out to the other schools, opened up spots for district-wide students to come participate in a Spanish program at Countryside. So what we did to explore what does this mean for Countryside and programming, we did a needs assessment. We dug into that with students, staff, and parents, both through survey and opportunity for focus groups, to talk about concerns, to talk about thoughts, to talk about ideas and strategies moving forward. And the purpose of that then was to take that information and bring that to the Countryside leadership team, which consisted of staff, administrators, and some parents. Parent from that had participated in Continuous Progress, a parent from the neighborhood programming, and having different perspectives there to look at all of this data, to theme it, and to extract from that the meaning of what our Countryside community wanted to do moving forward. As I shared at the work session, one of the things that's always challenging is trying to make decisions around recommendations in a group, and so you define a process around consensus as will of the group. Not necessarily will you get 100% of people to agree on an idea, but when the will of the group is there, you're ready to move forward. The recommendation from that group was to build out one Countryside, to unify Countryside programming and bring into place the practices from both neighborhood and Continuous Progress and bring them together in some way. There's great things happening in both of those programs. How do we bring those together? And so we are back here to the board to talk about that recommendation. The administrative recommendation then from the Countryside Leadership Group, the administrative recommendation is to phase out the Continuous Progress choice option at Countryside for new kindergarten students starting in the fall of 2024. If approved, that the next step would be for this admin team, along with teachers, to design how to bring that together and how to move that forward and what that would look like. And the first step that we would do is to create a guiding change document, just as was described in policy discussion previously, and bring that guiding change document back to the school board that would lay out the parameters for how that program or the programming would evolve at Countryside moving forward. In your report, there's some descriptions of those findings and observations from those focus groups. And a tentative schedule of what that phase change would look like is attached to the back, and I'll emphasize that that's an example, not necessarily an exact match for what that could look like. And I'll see, Karen, is there anything else you want to add before we turn it back to the board for questions or comments?
No, that was well done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll turn it back to the board to see what questions our school board has for us regarding this recommendation.
Board members? Oh, Ms. Green?
Thank you.
Director Green?
Thanks. Thank you so much for updating us, and I know we talked about this at our last meeting as well, but can you just, Principal Bergman, first of all, thank you so much for being here at 10:15. I know your kiddos get to school in like 12 hours or less than that, so I appreciate you being here. Can you just talk a little bit about communication and the cascade down to families now with this, if this goes through and this gets approved tonight, that kind of how we plan to talk about that now, what we've talked about already with families, what we're talking about now, and then as we move through these phases over the next couple of years, what that may look like for families? Thank you.
We started this process back in November when the board had said that our Spanish dual language program was coming to Countryside. So many of our families had that question of what does this mean? We've got a lot going on. Will this be related to CP or our continuous progress program? Will this be more about our neighborhood classrooms? What will this look like? We had questions from our parents. We had questions from staff about what does that look like. So since that time, we've been kind of addressing these things as we go. And really what it came down to is right away in January, we started a process of collecting feedback on what questions do you have? How are you feeling about it? We had really the potential to have 4 different programs at Countryside. We have a growing, robust, site-based special education program that has quadrupled in size since a year ago. We have our neighborhood classrooms that have a rich tradition of providing amazing instruction and just a great feeling of belonging across our building. We also have our continuous progress program, and again, that feeling of belonging and how people feel about being a part of Countryside. And now we're adding 2 classrooms at each grade level for Spanish dual language. What does that mean? Where are we, who are we? What are we doing? So many of those questions that come up. So our feedback, our questions, our surveys, the focus groups that we had done, really basically asked people about, what do you love about Countryside? What are you worried about? What do you want to see us continue? What kinds of things do you want us to explore as we bring these facets of Countryside together? And really it came down to belonging. It came down to how do we fit? How do we all fit together? And we also found out that there were a few cracks in what we were doing. We had some kids who were, well, I'm CP, well, I'm neighborhood, we didn't want to bring in another facet of Countryside and have it be, well, I'm Spanish, so we decided we wanted everyone to be the same. We wanted everyone to know that they belonged at Countryside, and what does that mean? One of the other things that we heard from particularly our students and our staff is that we wanted to make sure not only that people belonged and everyone belonged, but that we had expectations for what we had for each other. And what does that look like? What do we expect from kids when they're out and about in the building? What do our kids expect from the adults when we talk with kids about what's happening when they're out and about in the building? How do we talk with parents about those expectations that we have for kids? So it all kind of came together in how do we make sure that we're all on the same page? And we came down to that idea of it being about Countryside is one place, Countryside Strong, which is our character ed program that we're moving forward with this year. But really, how do we make sure that we are providing that one pathway? In other words, one countryside, but two pathways, not CP, neighborhood, Spanish, special services, but the two pathways being Spanish and English. And every kiddo gets the same something, the same opportunity for belonging, the same opportunity for our teachers to work well together in vertical teams, the same opportunities for all of the things that we have that are wonderful about Countryside. So that's what kind of came out of our process. And what we've been telling parents, what we've been telling staff all along is, we need your input. We want you to be a part of this. And from all, I mean, just an expansive amount of information that came, that was what came of the process this summer when our design team met. We had parent representatives, we had staff representatives. We basically said, if you want to come and meet with us, come be a part of it. They needed to hang with us for 3 full days. So we had a group of probably 25 for most of those days. We have shared with our staff that the recommendation be that we want to be that one countryside, and we're moving forward with some of those strategies already. But we haven't shared big and bold. What does that mean for continuous progress, and how does that phasing out look as we're phasing in our Spanish dual language program? Biggest reason for that is we have a lot going on. We have construction, we have new programming, we have so many things coming at us. We wanted to be careful that we weren't putting something out there before our board had an opportunity to approve of what we're doing, and that you feel strongly enough that you would tell us that we could move forward with those plans. I fully anticipate that the communication begins tomorrow, depending on how you share with us what we should do. I know that was probably a really long explanation for that, but this has been a long process, and there are parts of what we're doing at Countryside right now is that we're pretty fragile, and I want to make sure that we don't throw off that equilibrium by putting something out there in the communication universe that we're only going to have to take back. So now is our opportunity to, here's where we are, here's how we're going to do it. But we also have to be really careful to make sure that everyone understands that we're bringing forth what is best about Countryside, not what is best about CP, our continuous progress, or what is best about our neighborhood classrooms, but what is best across Countryside, and how can all of our kids have access to that.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was thorough, but I think super helpful, I know, for me as a board member and for our community to hear that. I know that it's exciting to listen to the evolution and the collaboration that took place with a lot of stakeholders. That takes a lot of intentional work, so I thank you for that, and I thank you for everyone who served on the design team. So, thank you.
Karen?
Thank you for this information and the process, and this has come before us in a couple different settings, and I just wanted to reiterate something that's been said before, that as you and your staff work through this, as needs arise, you please don't hesitate to make them known so that we can support you and your team in this process.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that what I heard you saying, Karen, is that you're doing what's best for kids, and that means a lot. And I don't want us to ever lose sight of that, even though decisions are hard and decisions impact families and all stakeholders in different ways. But I also recognize that you can only, I use this phrase, horizontally juggle things for so long. And when you have that many different programs, I think people forget or maybe don't understand that horizontal juggling happens in your school every day. When you have different programs that have different needs, scheduling, specials and all of that, it's a different beast. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness behind kind of stepping back to say what is best for students and what is best for students today versus what was best for students 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So thank you for all that's work, and I know it's not easy, and I'm grateful to you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question and then a comment. One is I just want to make sure that, actually, it's not a question, that everyone in the community understands that this transition is for kindergarten students starting in the fall of 2024. Okay, I just want to put that out there. And then I want to, I guess the only thing I want to say is that I think I can speak for the board, which is a little dangerous, but I want to make sure that teachers, students, everyone in the Countryside community does not feel that there is not a value placed on the continuous progress program, and that the individuals that have worked so hard to maintain that program, we recognize that, and we value what they've done and the community that they've built there. What you have laid out and what you have provided for us tonight, and what Janie just said, evolving and stepping back and looking at what are our parents looking for, where do we see wait lists, what do we need for students now, those are things that cause us to move, but it has nothing to do with not seeing the hard work that you guys do at Countryside. And I just want to state that sometimes what we feel is implied, people need to hear out loud, so I want to say that out loud. I'm very excited about the direction we're going. I'm also very cognizant that it's not easy, and I don't think that we could ask for a better leader than you, Principal Bergman. And so I just want to state as well explicitly how grateful I am for your leadership, and that one of the reasons that this is at Countryside is because of you. So sort of like when my husband gets a raise and they don't give him any money or help, like, you're like, thank you. So thank you. And thank you to the rest of the team, and thank you to all the people that are working on this, because it's an exciting transition, but also a hard one. And so that's all I wanted to say.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah. Oh, we have to vote. Okay. Does anyone else have anything? Okay. All those in favor of approving the Countryside programming update, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Nay? Okay, the Countryside programming update is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the proposed 2022-2024 collective bargaining agreement between Independent School District 273 and the Edina Administrative Council?
So moved.
Is there?
Second.
Thank you. That was speedy. Hello, welcome. Human Resources Director Sonia Saylor. Oh, sorry, Mert, and Director of Business Services, Mert Woodard. You like the dynamic duo, so welcome.
So good evening again. Director Woodard and I are pleased to announce that the Edina Administrative Council, which is our district's principals and assistant principals, have ratified a tentative agreement for the period beginning July 1, 2022, and extending through June 30th, 2024. Our negotiation teams worked very collaboratively together and reached a result that both values the important work, as we just witnessed here a few minutes ago, of our principals, and of course, including Principal Bergman, and also respects the financial parameters as provided by the school board. I'd like to commend our principal team for their dedication to this very important process. The highlights of the proposed agreement include step advancement in both years of the agreement for eligible principals, market adjustment to provide more competitive salaries in comparison to other metropolitan districts, and a 1.5% increase to the salary schedule in the first year of the agreement and a 1% increase in the second year. School district contributions towards health insurance plans would be increased by $36.66 per month, effective January 1, 2023. And there'd be one additional paid holiday, which would begin in the first year and would be in observance of Juneteenth. The total two-year total package for this proposed agreement is $6,557,585, which represents an increase of $183,702. And using MSBA's costing formula, that would be a two-year percentage increase of 4.47%. This tentative agreement is within the authority provided to us by the school board, and as a result, we seek your approval for this agreement.
Questions from board members? No? All those in favor of approving the collective bargaining agreement between ISD 273 and Edina Administrative Council, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The collective bargaining agreement is approved. Thank you both for your work on this.
Thank you. And then one last quick note, we just thought we'd let you know that we did reach a tentative agreement with our bus drivers just a few days ago, and expect their vote in December and hope to be back to you then in early January with that collective bargaining agreement, and we'll start with custodians soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve canvassing returns of votes for school district special election?
So moved.
Okay, who is the,
I say David.
David?
Not quite.
Who's the second?
With enthusiasm.
Second.
Karen's the second, okay. Who is on the? Oh, sorry.
He's still there.
Hi, Mert.
Good evening. So on November 8th, the school board held a special election in conjunction with the state general election to elect a school board member to a one-year term. Tonight's action is to canvass the results of that election and to declare the winner, Regina Neville. Tonight's action will also begin the 7-day contest period, meaning that the school board member that was elected cannot begin serving until at least November 22nd. If there are no further questions, the recommended action is before you.
Questions? All those in favor of approving the canvassing returns of votes for school district special election, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The canvass is approved. Do I have a motion to approve the issuance of certificates of election and district election-related duties?
So moved.
Second. Mert?
So this action follows directly from the previous item and authorizes the school board clerk to issue certificates of election to the successful candidate, Regina Neville. The action is before you.
Questions? All those in favor of approving the issuance of certificates of election and district election-related duties, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The issues of certificates of election and district-related duties is approved. Thank you, Mer. Do I have a motion to approve policy review 105 and 108?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Director Green.
Thank you, Chair Allenberg. We have two policies up for action tonight, Policy 105 and Policy 105 and Policy 108. We did not have much discussion at our October meeting, so I don't know if anyone has any additional questions on this, either of these policies. They were pretty straightforward changes and more aligned with statute. No? Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of,
We need to vote, Erica.
oh my gosh. Woo, okay.
She was going to talk about the policies.
I saw a typo, no, just kidding. Okay, wow, it is late. Okay, all those in favor of approving policy 105 and 108, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, policies 105 and 108 are approved. Sorry about that. Okay, I have a few updates, and then so does Dr. Stanley. So I just wanted to review for the community that as Business Director Woodard mentioned, that there's a 7-day period where the vote can be challenged for the special election. And the first day the new board member, Regina Neville, can be seated is November 22nd. And so we have potentially a work session November 29th. Our regular board meeting in December is December 12th. So one of those two meetings will be the first meeting that she will be at, but because of it's a special election, she will start immediately after she signs the oath of office, which will likely be November 22nd. And so this will be, unfortunately, David Goldstein's last board meeting, and because of that, we wanted to make it extremely long, to have you here as long as possible. So I would like to give a round of applause to Director Goldstein. Yay! Thank you for your willingness to do this.
Second time now you've said goodbye to me.
It is. And this is the last one, I think. So, yes. Secondly, I just wanted to mention that we tonight had a National Merit Scholarship. Were you going to talk about that? Okay. Event. And we had 12 Edina semifinalists and 20 Edina committed students, and it was one of my favorite ceremonies. And just wanted to say congratulations to those students, their families, the teachers that were there, and our entire district to celebrate these students. And then two things. Director Gabler pointed out to me that it would be great to thank those that were donated thanks to us that are in our consent agenda. So we just accepted over $130,000 of cash donations. So thank you to whoever did that. And then I love this. We got 8 high-quality stethoscopes from an anonymous donor that are used in normally critical care units. And so we have these amazing stethoscopes to be used in our health services offices. So thank you so much to whoever donated those to our health services department. I just wanted to publicly acknowledge those. Are there any committee updates before we? Okay, Dr. Stanley.
All right, thank you very much. Related to our commended and national merit semifinalists, that means that we had students who were 1/5 of 1% represented for all of the students who took the PSAT and the National Merit test. And so that is just something to be incredibly proud of. Okay, so I have a couple of commendations, and they're coming a little bit later. But this one was written to Caitlin Bickle. Ms. Bickle, my son, who's the parent, my son shared a 3rd-week update email for my grandson with me. It is so heartwarming to see the strides he is making this year. The length and detail in your writing made it extremely clear that you have his best interest at heart. I smiled quite a bit as I recognized my extortionary grandson's behaviors and quirks. I also wanted to tell you I'm in awe of the time and effort you put into this update. It is clear to me you go above and beyond for your students. I am sure my grandson will refer to you as, quote unquote, that teacher that helped shape my life as he grows. I hope Creek Valley knows what a treasure they have in you. With gratitude, Mary Matlock. And the next one is to one of our educators, Heather Schwartz. Heather, thank you, all uppercase, so much for this kind email. To wake up on a Saturday morning to this was sure special. We read it to our daughter, And she had a huge smile on her face. She loved being in your class. She loves being in your class so far this year. I appreciated you taking the time on a Saturday morning to connect with us as parents. I imagine you probably connected with many parents last Saturday morning, and I wanted to note how above and beyond you have gone already this year. And this email that you sent us shows your dedication to getting to know each student for their uniqueness that they bring to the classroom and the parent-teacher connection. Saturday mornings are for catching up on sleep, drinking coffee, your day off, but you chose to connect. We see you and appreciate you. Thank you for being exactly who our daughter has needed these past few weeks. She's a happy camper every day when she comes home from school. Cheers to you, Heather, Alexis, and Rob. And last but not least, this was written to the custodians at Valley View Middle School. Colleagues, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to our amazing custodial team that were quick to respond to an unexpected deluge near the cafeteria just 30 minutes before lunch today. As a team, they were able to control the damage, clean up the mess, and prep the spaces to limit the impact to our students. Mike, Dustin, Mike, and Brian, we appreciate all that you do for Valley View Middle School each and every day. But today, you saved the day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so thank you to those amazing staff members. All right, I know. I have 6 minutes left. You said 10:45. So, in addition, today was a really big day because today we announced the top 3 selected experiments that, and one of those could possibly land on the International Space Station. We had nearly 180 submissions, and today 3 teams of students, 1 from Southview Middle School and 2 teams from Edina High School, for a total of 9 students were notified that they were selected as finalists. This entire project has truly represented our strategic plan and reflects our strategy priorities of academic excellence, of developing leadership throughout the district, and of engagement. Engagement throughout the system with our teachers and students and administrators, certainly, and more than 40 community scientists and physicians and community members helped to actually screen and score the experiments. And so to me, that is the epitome of what we are looking for in our system. I want to take time to publicly thank the Edina Education Fund. We would not have been able to do this without the Edina Education Fund. We found out just at the tail end of the application process that it was going to cost $27,000, and we were able to simply pick up the phone and contact Kathy Rendelman, and she said right away she would support us. I also want to publicly thank my colleague and Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Smazel, for his project management. For those of you who don't know, Randy was also a science teacher, biology teacher at the high school level. I got to see him geek out so many times with this whole process, and so just always proud to stand alongside of Dr. Smazel, and this is just another one of those times. Let's see, finally, one more thing about that. Our finalist, like our final experiment that will be sent to the International Space Station, that will be announced in December, and we are all just sitting on pins and needles for that. And then finally, next week is our One Town, One Family prototype phase for design thinking. So from the onset, this Thursday, let me repeat that, this Thursday, November 17th, is our next One Town, One Family designed thinking session. And we are moving into the prototype phase. Since last April, families, community members, students, administrators, teachers, just all members of our community have been chomping at the bit to get to this place where we move into prototypes. And this is actually the place where we look at action steps and we determine prototypes, those action steps that we are going to use that will allow us to get at our vision that this entire group developed nearly 7 months ago. And that was that every student, every adult, every family member, every employee in Edina, in the city of Edina, would have a sense of welcoming and know that they belong in our system. And so we really invite everyone to come out to that. We have lots going on in our community, and our students will be staging at the high school for the concert. So we are actually going to be moving to Valley View Middle School. It will be held from 5 to 8 p.m. Please come out for just a fun night of action, engagement, creativity, curiosity, because we need your voice. I did it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley.
Can I just add one more commendation that was not mentioned? Thank you to Dr. Stanley. Thank you to the cabinet. Thank you for Jason for being here so late this evening after a very long day. And it's your dedication to the work. And even though we are requiring you to be here, given that's our work that we're trying to do, it's not done without you. So a heartfelt thank you for all of you and your team for putting up with us and making this happen.
Yes, thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nope.
No? We're now adjourned. Thank you.